Good morning. I don't like sitting behind barriers when I'm talking to people, so I hope you don't mind me moving this. Of course, I'm John Dilworth. I grew up, was born and raised in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. That's about 40 miles south of Louisville. I didn't realize until I was about 22 years old that I grew up very privileged. And the reason I realized that, I come from a large family, 8 children. My father was illiterate. My mom had a third-grade education. In layman terms, we grew up poor. But I didn't know how blessed I was until I really got out of college. And the reason I say that, the greatest role model I ever had was my illiterate father. Because he taught me what it takes to be a man and take care of your family. Never seen anybody work as hard and make sacrifices to make sure his children had. He was a proponent of education. I was drafted by the Miami Dolphins and everybody went crazy. My dad just said, "Good job, son." When I graduated and walked across the stage to Northwestern, he cried. Because he wanted my life to be different than his. I went to Northwestern State University, and I'll speed this up because I know you want to ask a lot of questions. I graduated, I was drafted by the Miami Dolphins, didn't make that team, played in the Canadian Football League. I taught and coached at Woodlawn, worked at Washington, Southwood. Became assistant principal, worked with Dr. McCullough, who's still there, who I think a lot of, and she hired me as an assistant principal at Captain Shreve. And then I began my journey as some say, troubleshooting principal. I won't say that, but I went to Fair Park, and about after the first year at Fair Park, I was asked to go to Huntington. And I know doing these things, people ask you, what is the toughest professional decision you've ever had to make in your life? And we think about closing schools, and we think about terminating people, but it's real easy for me. The toughest thing I ever had to do professionally in my life was when the kids at Fair Park heard that I was transferring to Huntington. They had a peaceful protest, and the hardest thing I had to do the next morning was to walk in that auditorium and look at my seniors and say, "Yes, I'm going to Huntington." Toughest thing I ever had to do. I almost called the superintendent and said, "Can't do it." They had signs all over the school, "Please, Mr. Dilworth, stay." So that's by far the toughest professional decision I ever had to make. But I've done the principal thing. I've worked at Northwestern State University, started there in 2003, primarily because I love Dr. Webb's, the president's leadership style. I work with him, but I miss children. Even though he even offered to make me vice president of student affairs, since I wanted to work with kids and I was doing that. But I miss K-12, because when I see so many young, particularly children of color, I see me. The little kid that stuttered, the little kid that was poor, the kid whose parents were not educated, but wanted them to get an education. Sometimes they know how to get the help that was needed for me or the family. So I've been superintendent now in Montgomery, Alabama. I was there almost 3 years. Most recently, I served as superintendent in East Baton Rouge. My official last day there was April 10th, 2012. Since that time, I've been retired. So that's enough about me, unless you have other specific questions, but I'm here to answer your questions. And let me say this. I'm not trying to get a job. I'll tell you, I want to come back and do what I love to do. This district has been great to me. I respect the people that I work with here. I want to go back to work, but my answers to you are going to be honest. I'm not going to make promises that I'm not going to keep, and I just want to be upfront about that. Okay?
Thank you. We're going to jump right into it. If you were hired as superintendent, what would be the top 3 areas you would tackle immediately?
Well, the first thing I want to do is to get with our school board members, because I do work for the school board, and I've kept up with Caddo through the news media, but it's not like being here to touch it, feel it, and see it, and I have to do that. But of course, I'd want the board, and I hope this advisory group could tell me, this is what we want you to do in year 1. I think that's the way superintendents operate best, is that the board and the community have to decide this is what we want. You've been here every day. I've been gone for 10 years, even though I keep up with it. So whatever the board says, this is what we want you to do, is what I'm going to do in the community. Now, I hope the board will give me an opportunity to go back, as I've done in both districts, when I'm hired, and go in different parts of town and have my listening tools, so I can listen to what parents and the community want to see in our school district, so that we can help formulate those goals together. That'll be the first thing. Now, I hate to come in here and say I'm gonna do A, B, C, and D, because I don't know that yet. I know by looking at student data that we've got to make some big decisions this year, particularly with some of our schools. I know that the RSD is putting a CEO for Caddo, and I've been through that in Baton Rouge, and they will take your schools. And what the community and the board is going to have to decide, and I may be answering another question, but I want to be as succinct as possible. This year is what are we going to do with some of the schools that are in jeopardy if we cannot build a relationship with the state to have some type of agreement where you're going to have a chance to grow. I can tell you from experience, when they take your school, Mr. Lee knows this as a best board member, and I know it as a superintendent. When they take your school, they take it. So if they take Fair Park High School and it may have a capacity of 1,200 students, they may not have but 110 charter school students in it. You're not going to use it to share the building with them, so it's gone. But it's still your building. So if they need a new roof, guess who's on the hook for it? The other experience I've had is they take a school, say a Fair Park, and I'm not saying they're going to take Fair Park, but I'm using that because I used to be principal there. And what they attempted to do at one point with me was they only had 250 students at Capitol High School, holds 1,500. To say, you're going to EBR is going to maintain the parts of the building that we're not using. So, I'm hoping that a relationship can be built with Superintendent White and the powers to be up there so that we can establish some kind of memorandum of understanding to give schools like Woodlawn, who in 2012 made 14-point games. That's a lot of games. But their school performance score is what, 50? Okay? They got to get to 75. So when you see schools gaining that way, it gives you some hope and a reason to go and say, give us 2 or 3 more years. Because if we keep making these kind of gains, I think we can get over the bar. So those are some decisions that I think the board is going to have to make.
I think this is a combination. It's addressing the problem with the achievement gap between the poor and the disadvantaged, as well as the racially diverse. We do have a number of schools in the district that are low performing. So how do you see addressing that? You touched on it in that first answer, but how do you, with the diversity that we've got within the school district and the fact that we've got low performing schools, how would you address that?
The first thing I would look at are the relationships. I think relationships are more important than curriculum, than dollars, than anything else. And after the relationships comes leadership. I've been one of those principals that went to Fair Park and they said the kids wouldn't sit down, and yeah, they sit down. If you care about them, if you're fair to them, and you protect their rights, because children are people too, if you don't let teachers and others talk down to them, you can put the expectation high as you want to in their meeting. So it has to be, you have to look at the leadership of the school. Those would be the first couple of things I'd start to look at, because unless the relationship piece is not right, and you're going to hear me talk about relationships a lot, because that's the main reason I left Baton Rouge, and I don't mind talking about it. But if the relationship piece is not right, you're not going to have a good school, you're not going to have a good school district. It's critically important that how we talk to each other, how we talk about each other, and how we work with each other to make good things happen for children are critically important. And I don't care how much money you got. If you don't have the relationship piece, you're not going to have a good school. And you're not going to have a good school district. So I spent a lot of time in schools that I say need a higher challenge. I think I was pretty good at going in these schools and establishing a climate of learning as a principal. I try to teach my other principals that are in these same situations. But it starts with relationships. You got to build them. Those are the kind of things that I'm missing the other part of your question. I'm sorry about that, but the leadership piece has to be in there. I would hope that we are financially supporting these schools in a meaning that meets the level they need. Let me say this right away, a lot of schools are Title I, and some people think because the school is Title I, that they don't need as much funding from central office, but they're Title I for a reason. And poverty does have implications on children, great implications. We did a survey in Baton Rouge. The average kindergarten child in Baton Rouge had 3 books in the home. 3 books. I'm not sure what it is here, but I don't think it'd be much more with some of our high poverty families. And we all know that when kids start school, we talk about achievement gap. We want to attack it, and the smartest way to attack it is before kids ever hit the school door house. Is to provide good health care for parents who are expecting a child, to start from the womb, as they say, to the tomb, to start having good programs, pre-K programs. We got a Head Start program, and everywhere I go, none of them coordinate. They don't build vertically. So I think that's where it started. I get a lot of heat about achievement gap sometimes, okay? Because some people think when you say achievement gap, you're trying to close the proficiency rate between blacks and white, and a lot of people think that. You know, what I want as a superintendent, I want every child to grow at least get 1 year's growth every year. Every child. So my proficient kids now, I want them to still grow. So that gap may stay there for a while. Where you get really worried about achievement gap is whether you are providing the necessary support for the lower performing schools that you need to. And that has to do with making sure you have the right leader in the school. Absolutely. Having the right leader and making sure we're having the proper funding and support for leadership. Did I answer?
Yes, I
Okay.
Next question is, what are some of the ways that you use to reduce the dropout rate and increase the graduation rate? And also, what percentage of students would you want to see graduate from high school?
Okay, the dropout rate, we had some success with that in both Montgomery and Baton Rouge. And of course, when you reduce the dropout rate, we were able to, and it's hard to increase the graduation rate, so when you get two points, you jump for joy, but we were able to do that. Truancy is a major problem in all inner cities. In Montgomery and Alabama, I worked with the district attorney. It was great in Montgomery because the business community was so different than the business community in Baton Rouge. They were ready to embrace change. So I worked with the district attorney, our school board and I worked with the district attorney and other stakeholders, and we had a Helping Families initiative. And what that happened, we wanted to get these kids before they got adjudicated to court. Because once the court system gets their hand, I mean, our chances of helping to make them success, it decreases. So when a child was suspended, and we knew the high-risk kids, we would do an assessment of the entire family. Kids are truant for a lot of different reasons. We found some of them come because they don't have clothes, shoes, whatever. Some of them come because they have to stay home and take care of younger siblings. But in order to help these children stay in school and be successful, you have to get to the root of the problem. And the way you get to the root of the problem, and try to make this a little bit quicker, in Baton Rouge, I've led that initiative as well. I forget what they call it now, but I work with District Attorney Hillamore, Mayor Holden, and Sheriff Gotro. And we opened up the old school that used to be on Government Street, and that's our one-stop shop. In essence, what I'm trying to say, to improve the dropout rate, you've got to give kids multiple opportunities, credit recovery during the year. But for these kids that are coming from families that have all of these problems, we got to get to the root of the problem, and that's what's going on in the home. And once we start educating our parents about the social service that many don't know that's available to help them with child care and with uniforms and things like that, we keep kids in school. Did I answer the rest? I've been retired for a year, so I'm getting back in the groove of this thing.
I'd like you to give us an example of curricular initiative that you led or facilitated that led to improved student achievement.
I hate talking about I, because I alone will never accomplish anything, and I'm going to be honest with you about that. I've been fortunate to have some good people around me. One of the things I'm proud of, because I always felt this, and I used to fight this when I was working in Caddo, first as an assistant principal, as a coach, and then as a principal, is that we put glass ceiling on kids sometimes, particularly kids of color and kids that come from poverty. We used to talk children out of taking advanced placement courses. Some schools used to you had to get a recommendation from a teacher to be placed in an advanced placement course. When I went to Huntington, I sat in a conference with a kid that was trying to take AP course, and I couldn't believe what I heard. Good counselor. But she said to the mom and dad, you know you're going to have to work real hard because you're probably going to fail. Stop. So what happened in Alabama that proves that I've been wrong all along, and regardless of what the research, it's great to see it happen. Same problem's going on in Montgomery, Alabama. Governor Bob Riley met with me, and we talked about what I wanted to do. I wanted rigor, I wanted relationships. I talked to him about the 3 R's, rigor, relationships, and relevance of education. And he could pick 2 districts in the whole state to give what we call the A+ college readiness grant to. What this grant did was recruit minority and poor kids into AP classes. But what it did, it paid the teacher $100 for every student that enrolled in their AP class. If the child made a qualifying score, which is 3 or 4, the teacher got $200 more. They paid every child $100 to get in an AP class. If they made a qualifying score of 3 or 4, they too got an additional $200. Guess what? Minority and AP enrollment skyrocketed, and I'll put the numbers in my resume, by 80%. Guess what? I followed it. These kids who had traditionally been talked out of not taking the higher level courses made qualifying scores of 3s and 4 on the counterpart of their more affluent students. So it can be done with the right expectation. That's a shame that we had to pay teachers $100 to get them in there and pay kids to do it. But what does it prove? That we don't have high enough expectations. So that's something that happened. It wasn't because of me, okay? It's because of the governor having faith in my leadership. He even said it publicly and put it in the paper. If it had not been for his leadership, they wouldn't have gotten this grant. And the school board and a lot of good people that worked with us, including those teachers that recruited those students and worked with them so they could have the qualifying score. Other things that I think are important, I'm going to be real quick on this. Real quick, because we're talking about is the opportunities that we give kids in terms of online credit recovery. But the biggest thing that I'm proud of, initiatives that I've done in both districts, you may do it here. Research data clearly tells you that the early success of children in school has everything to do with whether they're going to graduate. If a child fails kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, chances of graduating is 50% less. We started an initiative, and it's not free, because when I was here, we did it free. We provided summer school for kids who were close to passing in grades 1, 2, and 3. Normally, they come back and repeat that whole year, but if they were close, and I left that to teachers to decide and principals, then they could go to summer school and be promoted to the next grade. And I think that's key. Now, we didn't pay for it. We made the parents pay for it because I found out when we did it free in Caddo back when I was, I think in 2001, it was abused. And we let every child go for free. And guess what I was saying in school? Well, I can take it in summer school. They give up. But I'm glad to say that in both districts there, the business community thought so much of this that they gave us scholarships to award tuition for those kids that could prove they really had a need.
Have you seen our budget?
You know, I tried to get a copy of the budget. I don't know what's going on. I looked online. I couldn't get it. I called the finance department. I talked to Shannon in the finance department and said, I can't get a copy of the budget. She said, go to the finance page. I'm there. And she said, I'll have Mr. Lee call you back. Now, this was Thursday when I tried to get it. I looked at it briefly, I think, when it was on in the paper when you were getting ready to vote on it. But I hadn't been able to look at the entire budget yet.
Well, even though you have not, I think you can understand Caddo is experiencing a problem that many other districts are. And have you had to deal with the deficit budget before?
My after my first year in Baton Rouge, we cut $32 million.
Well, tell us a little bit about your experience in solving budget issues.
Well, there's two areas you gotta look at when you do that. Personnel, what we pay people that we employ, is about 75% of the budget. Some places 80%. And if you got a great teacher-people ratio, and you've got a big central office staff, and in East Baton Rouge, where they had principal, assistant principal, deans of students, all that support, it costs. That's one place you look. You have to look at your overall total population. We're losing students in Caddo, have been losing students in Caddo. How many schools are we operating that are way less than capacity? You can hardly afford to run an elementary school with less than 300 students in it. Because you gotta have a principal, you gotta have a secretary. If you're running high schools with 400 and 500 kids in it, it's hard to do. You gotta have a principal, you gotta have a head football coach, you gotta have counselors. So, as tough as it is, and I said I wasn't gonna try to get a job there today, I think this district is seriously gonna have to look at facilities. We're gonna have to look at having consolidations. We're gonna have to talk about schools closing, because you're not gonna make it financially. And those are tough talks. When I talk about tough decisions, toughest thing for the superintendent, I've had to do it in both places. Because we had small elementary schools that were doing okay, but we just couldn't afford to keep, 188 students. You can't run them. But when you're having these kind of talks, the hardest thing for the superintendent is to get out and conduct these poor reforms, because nobody wants a school to close. I had one in Baton Rouge, and it was a 3-hour meeting. And I let staff opening up, and they started booing, and when I got to the mic, it was about over with. And the most humiliation that some people say that I went through, to me, was my crowning moment, because I couldn't stop it, because they weren't going to listen. They wanted to frustrate me, so I'd say something disrespectful, or they wanted me to walk out of the meeting. But about halfway through, I thought about something. I said, I tell my principals and teachers that when parents come up and they upset, to maintain their composure. One man got right in my face and said, I don't know why he brought you from Alabama. I don't like you and I want you to leave. And he was that close to me. And something my dad told me a long time ago, I said, let me tell you this. I hope by now, after about 2 hours of that, I hope by now that whatever you say to me is not going to get a reaction. I learned a long time ago, and my father taught me that you can't always control what other people say to you or say about you, but you can always control what you say about people and what you say to them. Besides that, we had about 500 students out there. I said, our kids are watching. I consider myself a role model. I will never stoop to some of the things that's going on here because I was raised better than that. Then we had a productive meeting for the last 45 minutes now. Some of y'all probably saying, why didn't you say that at first? I probably should have, and maybe we'd have got along. But those are tough meetings for a superintendent to conduct. But it's even tougher for the people that's got to sit around this horseshoe because the superintendent doesn't vote. So I've learned that you can go out there and get killed with these forums, but if the political will doesn't sit around there to make these tough decisions, nothing's going to get done.
On neighborhood schools, I know you're aware of our situation with the magnet program and so forth. What is your philosophy on dealing with the neighborhood schools?
Well, I love the idea of neighborhood schools. I hate the busing. I really do. I wish all kids could have a school in their neighborhood that offered everything that they needed. Unfortunately, that's not the case all the time. Unfortunately, what a lot of school districts do is that they, and I'm not being negative, but the need for John Dilworth as a principal came because the people that were there before me neglected children and staff, and I had to go in and clean up what hadn't been done. That's to place accountability on the adults that were in the building, show children that we love them, and things change. It's no big secret how do you do that, but you got to care about it. So if you got people that are letting these schools just go down, 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 because they don't want to hurt some adults' feeling, and we feel like that we're running an employment service, then we're just hurting kids. So to have good neighborhood schools, we're going to have good principals that has a vision that says, same thing I did at Huntington. I I want magnet programs for my kids. And I'm not bragging because it was all of them. But when I went there, we had a little over 1,000 kids. I stayed there 4 years. We almost had 700 kids when I left, 1,700 when I left. And we were at the point where we wasn't even taking magnet kids from magnet high as a second option anymore. We did the first 2 years, but if we were not the first option, they couldn't come over at the end of the 9 weeks. Because what it was doing was putting too many kids in my classroom that I didn't have teachers for, and they couldn't hire them. But that's what can happen with good vision, good leadership in the school. We have to have that. And people need support. Magnet schools, here to stay, as far as I'm concerned. I was at South Highlands this morning, and I think part of what you have to do as a superintendent is you have to ask yourself, if I've got 400 kids that want to get into South Highlands, where are they coming from? And where do they go when they don't get in South Highlands? I know where most of them are going without doing the research. Private school. Okay? Private school. So, you know, for me, and I'm telling you, I know it's different ideas about magnet. For me, it doesn't make sense to turn away 400 potential parents and kids that want to get in a good program, and they go into private school, so we're really not taking away from other schools the way some people say we are, because they go into private school anyway. Those are the hard kind of conversations that must occur if we're going to have the kind of school district that I know we all want. And they're hard conversations. Hard conversations. I like the idea of magnet components, and I'm more inclined to do that because, like at Huntington, we had a law magnet, and I think there are different things in that. That way you can give your kids the curriculum that they need, the type of challenging courses they need, and they can stay in the neighborhood without getting on buses driving all the way to Caddo or wherever.
To tag that question, I want to ask one other thing based on your statement. The problem, I think, and the concern has been then, and I agree with you about if a child parent wants them to go to a magnet school, many of them will put them in a private setting if it's not available in Caddo Parish. How then, what's your philosophy on strengthening those neighborhood schools and stop the bleeding, but we just keep losing them like that?
Now, you know, I think those are conversations that you have to have with parents in neighborhoods. When we created the law magnet component at Huntington, I didn't lead a meeting as principal. Okay? And we met for about 7 months, and there were about 10 classrooms being used by parents, teachers, and students. They came up with what was going to be there. I think the same type of things have to happen at the individual schools. But again, first of all, it starts with good leadership. Because if you don't have a good principal, guess what? You're not going to have good teachers that want to come work there. And you're not going to be able to keep them in school if you don't have a strong principal. You got to get the leadership piece right. A leader that understands they have to build relationships with parents, with students, with teachers, and the community. And then I think we got to go in those communities and say, what is it that we want to see? Not only today, but 10 years from now. And much of that has to be based on data. Health fields are wide open. Technology is wide open. But those are kind of discussions you have to have. And then when the parents, and the reason we were successful in Huntington and Rosewood, because the parents had to say so and what it was going to look like. I mean, they were at the table. And that's what we have to do in each of these communities.
Now, and you keep mentioning principles, so that leads me to another question. What criteria do you look for in selecting a principal, and what has been your experience with growing your own?
I would much rather prefer to grow my own, but to be honest with you, I hadn't been in the district long enough to see the fruition of that labor. Okay, I'm a big opponent of trying to stay local with all hiring. I did that in Baton Rouge to the fall. What I look for in principal, first of all, I have to have somebody who is a bridge builder, who can build relationships. Have to have somebody with integrity and honesty. Because the hardest thing to do as a principal is to go in people's classroom and tell them what their work really looked like. Okay? If it doesn't look good, a lot of people don't have the backbone to just tell the teacher, hey, don't like this, we're gonna work on this, I want you to improve on this. The worst thing that a principal can have, and everybody knows it, and parents know it, they know the low-performing teachers in a school. Parents know it. Teachers know it. And if you got a principal that won't address the lowest performer, then that's not firing people every time. That means going in and trying to provide support for them so they can be held. I've had teachers that knew the content, but they couldn't get the opening of the class smooth. So I have to be up there, or I'd send an AP up there to make sure the kids behave until they can get into the lesson. Once they got into it, it was fine. Some, it was the same thing. At the end of the lesson, they couldn't close the lesson. So we knew that, and we stayed with them until they learned how to do those things. Those are the characteristics I look for in a principal. Yeah, the principal has to love kids more than anything else. That's just like a superintendent does. Because I tell you, if you don't really love children, and you're not willing to fight for them as a principal and a superintendent, you're not going to be successful, you're not going to be very happy.
What's your experience in meeting the needs of the special education student?
I'm a former special education teacher.
What are some of the needs that you see in most districts that's not being
Well,
met?
the needs are accountability, again, and I'm not saying accountability is everything. You still may be involved in the corrective action plan from the State Department. May be out. When I got to East Baton Rouge, and Ms. Tyler, who's deputy superintendent, she's a good friend, she called me in, she said, John, you're in trouble. I said, what's wrong? She said, your people haven't been doing what they need to do, and they're about to take all federal funding from you. I said, give me 2 years, this is going to be strict. She said, I will. Her boss said, nope, we're going to put them in intensive corrective action. What we're finding is, again, it goes back to relationship between parents and teachers. But where the relationships aren't there especially, we're not following IEPs of students, individual education plan of students. I've seen not being revising them when they need to be revised. Just because you create an IEP today doesn't mean that it's going to be what's best for that child 3 months down the road. Those are some of the issues. We hadn't done manifestation destination determinations of children, sometimes suspending them when that behavior is related to their exceptionality. And it's just more of an accountability, I think, that starts, I think, with the superintendent and runs all the way down to the principals. Because I know what the problems are because I see the data every day. I see it. I mean, you can do a lot of things with data, but if it sits on your desk and you just have conversations about it, you're not out there talking to the people that's in the field to make a difference, then you're good as looking at it. So those are some of the issues that I've seen. One of the things that used to concern me, I don't know if it's still the same or not, I love the idea of the Caddo Superintendent. And we used to have a reading threshold that would exclude so many kids that I really felt like would really benefit if they could get in there and do some of those hand-on training that we're doing over there. So I hope that's changed, but we need to find more avenues. You know, the whole goal of kids with exceptional needs is to try to integrate them into the regular classroom, so-called regular classroom, as quickly as possible.
Along the lines of what you're talking about, what steps would you take to ensure that the leadership of schools and district officers are comprised of able individuals with capacities necessary to provide positive direction for our schools?
I don't have a problem in telling people how to work with them. Never have. Okay? Those that have worked with me, when I was a principal or if I was chief operation officer, would tell you. I don't raise my voice. Everybody under my watch will be held accountable. Okay? I'm not one to sit in the office. There's board members out there, but I used to tell them in Baton Rouge, I can either be at lunch with you, or I can be out in the schools looking to see if we're getting what we need to get. So again, it comes down to teaching, and that's part of a leader's teaching. Those under my charge, what I want them to do, I want to share my professional experiences, my personal experiences, and every skill that I have to make them better than me. And the other part is that you have to have trust also. But it's not hard to know what your central office staff is doing, except in finance sometimes. But the people that are in the school, the executive director, I can go spend 10 minutes on the campus and know whether they're doing their job done. I can go out there right before the bell rings to start school. I can watch 5 minutes of kids walk to class. I can go through the restrooms, and especially the boys, and see how clean they are, okay? And then I can take a random sample in the classroom. If it's an elementary school, go into second grade classroom. See if what they're being taught are totally different. Because there ought to be some sequence in what you're doing. That tells me almost everything I need to know. And if I see problems, guess what? I'm going to jump on the principal. It's not my job. I don't evaluate principals. I come back and I talk to the people who evaluate those principals. And I said, I need you to go out here. Maybe it's been a bad day, okay? Don't go out there with your guns blazing. But look and see if you see what I saw. And if they see what I saw, then we got an issue that we need to address. But I don't stop there, because guess what? I'm going back later. Schools got better in Montgomery and Baton Rouge. And I know they got better because of my leadership. I don't think you can go to either place right now. You talk to 100 principals, 95 of them will tell you, good man, good leader, supports us. I've had to fire some, they might say, please, you don't want to deal with him. But, you know, never fire nobody without offering support.
Also interested in your communications plan in dealing with your subordinates and also the community.
I love to have the listening tours, which are more than people coming out to hear me, because I want to hear from the community. I like to do those early on in the tenure and continue to do it. It's one thing that I think I do that it's probably not unique to me, because I'm sure some superintendents do it, but I haven't seen them do it yet. The one thing I found out when I first became a superintendent is that I spend so much time with the board, with my staff, and the few principals that I had forgotten about the folks that make all this stuff work. Teachers. I created a teacher advisory panel in both districts. I think that's the best thing I have ever done in my life. There's a teacher that's selected from every school, not by the principal. In fact, I asked the principals don't even be in that meeting. Because I want a teacher that the staff believes will fight for children. Now, the reason I think it's important because I need to hear from the people, what's going on, what are your issues, what can we do to support you? And when I did this in Baton Rouge especially, I had to do it without my cabinet. And the reason I had to do it without my cabinet because teachers were afraid to speak about our problems in front of them, thinking they would get some kind of retaliation back. But it works best when they understood my staff wasn't going to retaliate. That you can sit there and you can talk, how can you get better if you're not going to talk honestly about what your problems are? And how can we get better as a district if you got a superintendent, I guarantee you I'm not one of those, who don't want to listen to what the issues are. And I don't have the answers all the time, so I say to these teachers, help me. You know what? They do. And it helps you. That's one way I communicate with folks. Because those folks you don't communicate with a lot. Emails, I used to say I have an open door policy. I will never say that again as superintendent. Okay? Because it can't. You just can't function with an open door policy. Because I'm going to a meeting and there are parents that come from 20 minutes, 30 minutes away, and they sitting there and they think I got to be at the State Department. So I work by appointments, but I try to see everybody I can. Any mode of communication with the board, I always send a Friday summation of what's going to happen next week, my schedule, my staff send in pertinent information that they might need to know about upcoming events or things that might go on in personnel. I don't want to send them so much stuff they never have time to read and it's irrelevant, but I try to keep them apprised of the issues that's going on in the district and what's going to be happening next week.
How do you balance the desire to compensate the employees with the budgetary restrictions placed upon the district? And also, what are other ways outside of the negotiation process that you've been able to reward for great performance?
You know, I think everybody wanted to, more than money. I'm the first superintendent in East Baton Rouge that didn't give a $500 bonus for Christmas. Because it was it was costing us $2 million. And the board didn't realize at the time how desperate we were in losing funding. And the employees didn't like that, particularly the first year. And they said, why are you not doing it? Because I said, I want people working. So I'd rather not give you $2 million now and have to cut somebody, which would be a bus driver, teacher aide, than to give it to you now and somebody lose a job. But to answer your question, I believe this with all my heart. We cut $32 million from the budget, and because I communicate with my teacher advisory panel, I communicate with the principals and the teacher association, there was not one person. We froze teacher salaries. There was not one person to come to the podium to speak against the budget. Not one. Because it wasn't a surprise to anybody. I was able to tell them, why are we doing this? And not one person. And that was a lot. $32 million is a lot of money. The first 2 years we cut $50 million. So to make a long story short again, it goes back to relationship. Our people want to be valued. They want to be respected. They don't want to have to beg for things that we can give them by just having to keep calling and saying, we need this. They want us to be service-oriented. And as superintendent, I've always considered myself to be the head servant. But my whole staff, all we do is support principals and teachers. That's all we're here for. That's all we're here for. So when you do those little things, respect and respect for the people that's worked there, that you listen. You know, sometimes you can't do the money part, but they'll stay with you. At some point, you got to do the money part to stay competitive. Okay?
Along that same line with the budget and so forth, what innovative approaches have you taken at your other locations to get additional funding for the school district?
Well, you know, I think the biggest thing that I did, and when I'm doing a resume now, I forget to put some of that stuff on there. And I'm not saying because I didn't do this, we did. We would apply for certain grants, and we had one grant writer on staff. But you always had to have a partner, 503. And we created our own foundation for that. So now we have an automatic partner. The foundation for the school system is also for those people who want to donate to schools that has alumni all over the nation. We got McKinley and all those graduates that may want to go to the athletic department, but that's a way to channel the donations, and I think that's important. If we don't have a grant writer, we need to find the best one we can get. Because when you have dwindling funds, that's a way to bring additional funding to help children into the district. And there's a couple of ways you can do it. They can work for you on commission. Every dollar they write a grant for, they get a percentage of. We can pay them a salary. But those are just some of the things.
This next question, I think, is an interesting question to me. You may be Houdini. Share ways that you can effectively communicate with the board, particularly and other administrators, teacher staff, classified staff. You touched about the community and student, but just more concerned about your communication with the board.
Oh, okay.
Same thing I said.
I've had, I have strong feelings about this. I had a great working relationship with the board in Montgomery. I think it was great. People exaggerate what happened in Baton Rouge, and I want to talk about that, okay? Nobody will ever say that they've heard me or no board member will tell you that I disrespected them, because I haven't. Never. I always said, these are my bosses. And the one thing I've said, if I'm not seeing eye to eye with my boss, somebody has to go. And that's me. But I've never publicly said any negative thing about the board. What happened is this, and I'm going to tell you the truth, okay? 9 months into the job with the Baton Rouge board, and I think that's what you want to do, right? I hope. With the Baton Rouge board, 9 months, 2 months into the job, the board president came to me and says, I said, I can't get anybody to apply for this Scotlandville job. Good school, magnet component, and 3 applicants. What's wrong? 3 applicants. Board president tells me 2 board members out there telling people not to apply. So what are we gonna do about it? Well, I'm gonna say this with all respect. It's never been in my job description as superintendent to police the board, okay? Or to have conversations with boards about their behavior. But somebody has to do it when it's affecting the school system. I go to these 2 board members, I said, I understand that there's some rumors going around that you're telling people not to apply for this principal position. Oh, we were only kidding. Superintendents, boards of education cannot kid with people when it comes to job applicants. So I'm sitting here starting a school, because I didn't start to middle of July, I think, July 1st. We're getting ready to start a school and only have a viable principal to go to school because of the actions of 2 board members, okay? There were time after time that these kind of things happen. You need a strong board president and vice president to police the board. And that's just it. That's what created some of my problems in Baton Rouge. When I quit in 9 months. And it's for 2 or 3 reasons. And it wasn't about the board at that time. My wife had had gotten to the point we were seeing neurologists. I didn't know what to do because it happened to me like all of a sudden. She's a former teacher. She worked for 33 years, taught school. We moved to Montgomery with the hopes of, and the day we buried her mother, something happened. I thought it was stroke, whatever. But I had to get her closer to home. Closer to home meant Baton Rouge. That's the only reason I left Montgomery, because she had cousins and people down there. And I needed to know that families were going to be around to help her, or I couldn't do this job. That was the reason that I quit. But my wife is very prideful, and I am too, because it's really nobody's business about my wife's health that has to be in the front page of the paper, on television. And when I said that to board leadership, I said, I've got to work out some things with my wife, so we'll probably go back to Montgomery. I said, I had to go out of town for a SACS meeting. I'll be back on Monday. Let me take care of this with the media when I go back. Well, guess what? The next morning, before I get ready to go to the airport, my wife is on the internet. Dilworth resigns, cites wife poor health. You don't do that, okay? But during that time, I had to decide whether I was going to come back, because when I was in Atlanta, this is almost like Fair Park again. Preachers were calling me from all over the city. The 2 board members that I had an issue with early in the year that was telling people not to fly were calling and saying, please stay. Okay? And they were honest about it. And then I had 2 other board members speculating about why I left. And they got in the media and said because they are micromanaging. That's where they came from. Not from me. It came from different board members. They arguing back and forth about who's micromanaging. Yeah, some of it was true, but that wasn't the reason I quit. I went back primarily because the board had begun to change that hired me. And the outpouring support that I got from teachers and students, petitions, came to my office waiting on me one day, just there, begging to stay. But that misconception with that board was, that got all out of line. When I decided not to renew my contract, is because you need to understand this too. In 18 months, I sat with 19 different board members around the circle. 19. In 18 months, okay? When the board election started, some of the legislators used this, it was even called the Dilworth micromanagement bill, to try to get some of the board members not re-elected. We got 6 new board members in January of my 2nd year. So in 18 months, I had sat with 19 because Reverend Tommy Gibson took Jay Augustine's place for a while. But the first board I had, I probably would still be there because many of them had come around, they understood what I was trying to do. The second board, one of the board members, and I don't want to sing any of them out, but one I respected the most, he decided not to run. He said, "John, I know you're the man for the job. I just don't know whether this new board is going to let you." Because they were hired to fire you. And when I say relationships mean everything, I didn't want a contract renewal to keep fighting with 5 or 6 members of the board to do what I thought was right for children, if we couldn't show that. Because to me, the most demoralizing thing we can do to our employees is have a board and a superintendent that's publicly bickering with each other, and we're cutting their pay because we can't give them money. It's demoralizing. I have never been disrespectful to a board or never told anybody in the press anything negative about a board member. You may be able to find it online. When I said I wasn't renewing my contract, these are the words that I used. I have failed. I have failed for almost 2 years to bring this board together. I'm no fool, because it's part of the board's responsibility to try to get themselves together too. But I wouldn't go and point a finger at the board to fracture a community, and that never helps a child succeed. So that's kind of what happened down in Baton Rouge. I think that relationship and how we conduct business around this dais, and I'm going to say this to the board today, because part of the problem I had when I first went to Baton Rouge was this too. Ask anybody there. Part of my contract said build a strong relationship with the State Department of Education. I can do that. Build a strong working relationship with the Chamber of Commerce. Can do it, done it. But I can't do it if I got 4 board members on television being negative about the state superintendent every meeting, making jokes. Paul Pastrick's name, you know this, they referring to him as Little PP. The general. Now, we're going to sit here and conduct business and do that, and then you want me to go up and see Superintendent Pastrick and say Baton Rouge need help. Is that impossible? Does it make sense? It did to me, okay? If you're going to sit here on Thursday when you have your cameras on you, and you're going to say negative things about the Chamber of Commerce and what they didn't do 3 years ago, and then I'm going to drive over and sit down around the table from them and say, work with us. You think it's going to work? Absolutely not. Those were my issues. So around this table, I think it's important that we are prepared for board meetings. I think it's important that we conduct the people's business in a very efficient manner, that we respect each other. Because if we can't do that 2 times a month that we sit around, that what confidence do we inspire from our teachers, our principals, and our community? We can't. Those were some of my issues. Those were my beliefs. Money, I walked away from $220,000 in Baton Rouge. It didn't mean that much to me, because I knew that was going to could be a toxic situation sooner or later.
Since we got you preaching,
I'm preaching.
all right. We're getting a lot of help from the state in a lot of different areas. One is in curriculum, and the things like Common Core, state standards, compass assessment system, value-added model. But we're also getting some teacher evaluation standards. What are your comments in those 2 areas? I guess it kind of focuses on the responsibility we have to the state relative to how our students are performing.
Now, you said 2 areas. Are you meaning with value-added measurements?
Yeah, the value-added model, that's what the question has here. And I'm really outside my area here. Common Core state standards.
The Common Core, okay. Well, you know, the value-added is here. It's been voted on, and I try not to ever lose too much sleep or fret over things that I have no control of. I'm concerned about the way it was implemented, but me being concerned and trying to fight about it right now would do no good. I just want to make sure that our teachers are prepared for it. A little bit more, with 50% still being on the student growth, And I think a portion should, I always believe that a teacher ought to be measured by how a student grows. 50% may be too much. I'm not an expert in it. I'd like to be it less. But I like the fact that the principal's observations will, and other pertinent staff will count for 50% of it. Personally, it's not ideally what I would like to see in terms of what the ratio is. And I think we kind of rushed into some things with it. I would like to see it piloted a little bit more. However, the reality is that we're in it. With the Common Core, I'm a little worried, but the 3 schools I visited this morning, of course, that's 3 of the snapshot of many, feels like they are prepared because their teachers have been to training and they're coming back to train other teachers. But it's going to take a lot of professional development to get our teachers ready, to have our kids ready for the Common Core. I like the Common Core in a way because for the first time we can look at apples to apples. Louisiana always get the rap of being the worst, among the worst in the nation. I've been to schools all over the nation through the Caddo Superintendent's Academy. I can tell you, we're not the worst in the nation. So it'll be pretty good now to see some common standards of what kids are expected to know in Louisiana and Mississippi and Alabama. I like that. But I'm worried about the preparation that our people have had for it.
What I want to do now, and run a good time schedule, I'd like to ask one point out. There may be some questions from the group that I think we basically covered everything we had here, but I'm open up for the group to ask a question in a minute. But I want to ask just a simple question. Why do you want to come to Caddo Parish?
I consider this home. I went to Northwestern when I was 17 years old. And from that point up until 2007, this has been home for me. I have put blood, sweat, and tears in this district for 27 years. I did everything that was asked of me. When I was at Huntington and we got things going well, naturally you don't want to leave. I wanted to be a Sandra McCall or a Tyrone Burton that I just left, that's been out there 12, 13 years. I wanted to see the fruits of my labor and the labor that parents have done continue to blossom. But I was asked to go to Baltimore, and I went. You can search around here, and you can count on one hand the number of people that make the sacrifices that I made for this district. And those were tough jobs. Okay? Tough jobs. So I have sacrificed. I love the district. I think I'm a good fit. I know there are other good candidates. I'm not going to say I'm the best candidate. That's for the board to decide. But I know I have the integrity. I know I have the courage. I know I have the vision. And I know I have the people spirit to get people to work with us. I've shown it everywhere I've gone. So that's why I want to come back.
Question.
I have one.
Yes, come on.
Yes. You made statements that you would fight for the rights for all children. And I would like to know from you, you elaborated on it, but I want you to touch on it again. How would you go about getting quality education for all schools, strong leadership principals, administrative people, and would you be willing to release disqualified teachers and principals, or would you move them to the central office?
Woo! That's like that.
We never do that.
Really?
Yes. Before you make this selection, please just don't hear what I say to you, okay? Make some phone calls. Appoint anybody on this committee to make some phone calls to Montgomery and Baton Rouge and say, will he fire principals? Will he fire ineffective teachers? I know what the answer is going to be. Let me say this. That's not going to help us to be, in the long run, that won't help us to be a strong school district. Let me tell you what it takes to do that. More than terminate people, it's working with them close enough to when you start to see the problems develop, giving them support they need to become better, okay? That's what we have to do. We can't sit back and because everybody else now is complaining, but yet we've offered that person no support no help. And because we're getting political pressure, because now kids are not respecting the system, then we firing folks. That's wrong. So I work with my staff and say, hey, I don't want surprises. I don't want anybody else to be surprised. It's tough taking somebody's job. It's not easy. But the way is easy for me because I know as superintendent, I can sit down and say, we provided A, B, C, D, and E. We help you to do this, and now I have to make a decision about children. And those decisions become pretty easy. I fired principals. I fired 2 right before I left Baton Rouge because they couldn't keep order. I go out there and things were going crazy. And when I hear phone calls about something going on at school, if I'm not in a big meeting, I'm out there. I'm right in the middle of it. And I try not to take control. I know I can if I need to, because that's the principal's job. But when I get out there and the principals are sitting like this, and he's got 5 police officers, which I hate. I love police officers. They don't know how to deal with children. You know, move them aside. Get in there and start talking to your kids. So that was the tipping point for me. I had to go out there myself and go, get them to the auditorium. Get the freshmen in the auditorium. Get your upperclassmen in the gym. So, yeah, you know, some of these hard decisions, and I know what is going on in Caddo tradition. I've replaced some people as principal that end up central office. True. True. And, you know, that kills you as a district. But I wouldn't do that.
Right, yes.
Yeah. I like what you said about building relationships. I think that's key to the, to really making the school district work well. What things would you do, or what ideas would you have about building relationships with parents, about getting parents more involved, especially in areas where you've got parents that are working multiple jobs, they really can't, they don't feel like they can get involved. What kind of things would you do to help proliferate that?
Well, as much as I could try to do from the superintendent's seat, I have to do it through the principals and the personnel at the school. And the one thing that we stressed in both districts, and I would stress here, and you never get great at it, so you have to keep stressing. First of all, we want to have good customer support. We want to treat our parents with respect, okay? As far as volunteers, we need to organize it, because I've been in schools and seen schools where volunteers are running all over the place and you don't know what's being accomplished because the principal and the staff hadn't planned properly on how we're going to use volunteers in our schools. People want to volunteer, but when they get there, they want to know their time is valuable. What do you want me to do today? So we stressed it, and that started happening in our schools. If you check, you see volunteers went up both districts when I was there. Customer service. We had secret shoppers from the Chamber of Commerce in Montgomery that would go and be irate at the school, see how the secretary would react, and come back and report to it. But customer service, speaking to parents and communicating them in a language they can understand. Parents are sometimes intimidated going to school. A lot of times you're not going for a good reason because the person you love most in the world has made a mistake, and you got to hear about it. But if we particularly sit in meetings and we don't learn how to communicate with parents and stop using some of the education jargon that we tend to use, I never forget sitting in a meeting with a principal, and he was saying to a parent, well, ma'am, the reason our district didn't make AYP is because your son's IEP, and so you're sitting there and you're going, what did you just say to this parent? It makes sense to me. But, instead of saying your child had the individual plan that we had to work on. But those are 2 things that really don't cost much for volunteers to come to the school. They have to be valued and wanted to work. At Huntington, we used to, it's amazing. I remember one Saturday we had a cleanup, and we had 250 people out there, cutting grass, painting halls, and they would do anything we needed done. You know why? Because we tried to treat every child with some dignity. We tried to. Sometimes I'd mess up, but we tried to. And they felt like they were being heard and were a part of the school community.
Another question?
Got one?
Okay.
Mr. Stewart, good to see you again. Welcome
You too.
home. If you get the job, it's not the greatest job in Louisiana. We'll acknowledge that it's ours. It's a district that's got 60,000 seats for 40,000 kids. a budget that's bleeding money. We got board elections next fall. But I'm intrigued by your answer to the magnet question. You understand that you have to compete for your kids. How are you gonna, if you're superintendent, what are you gonna do in the next year to have Caddo compete for its own kids? 'Cause I agree with you. I think you're losing kids to private. You're gonna lose kids to charters. What will you do as superintendent to turn that around and compete for your own kids?
I'm not sure. Because I'd have to get here. The one thing I know is this. You can advertise, you can say a lot of things, but it's what's happening in your district that counts. The best PR you can ever get at a school or a school district comes from the people who are employed there and people who have children at those schools. That's the best PR you can get. So I don't care how many ads you get. If we're, I keep going back to relationship, folks. But if we're not working well with parents and the magnets are magnets. And they're a different animal altogether. They get to select based on admission. Kids can't have discipline problems, can't stay there with discipline problems. They ought to be. They ought to be great. I want to see them even better. But I can't sit here and say today that I'm going to spend a lot of time trying to recruit parents back in the system because I'm seeing too many kids that we're losing through dropouts, kids that are not succeeding. That's where most of my effort has to be. But it's a reality that you got to reach out and do it. And competition is coming even further because once they open up the charters and here, and I know you got a good one that's opening up in Magnolia, and it's going to pull some kids. But I think it's a type 1 charter. Yeah, so that's a good thing if it's type 1.
Yes, sir, to the back here.
Yes, we are just a few days before the beginning of the school year. Do you come to us with a plan for 30, 60, 90 days out to get the school year started? And how will you make sure that the school opening is a smooth school opening and that the children are taken care of in a manner in the next 30, 60, 90 days out?
Well, if I was sitting here in place, it'd be a pretty easy answer to that, okay? But I hurt my chances, but I'm always going to be honest. You know, the timing of the naming of the superintendent July 30th is problematic, okay? Because you got school starting August 12th. And you just have to make sure that your maintenance people, that your HR folks have done what they needed to do. The area executive directors that are out in the schools and their kids have viable schedules and not dummy schedules, so when they get to school, they don't have 3 classes they already took and don't need, but that kind of work should be done now, and you should have a smooth opening school. It's another part of your question that I'm sorry I drifted on.
Do you have a plan for 30, 60,
Oh,
90 days out?
I graduated from the Bro Superintendent's Academy, and they said, yeah, you go in with a 90-day plan. I tried that the first time. I'm coming in a plan with my ears wide open and my eyes wide open. I want to listen. My plans are to listen as much as I can, observe as much as I can, build relationships. But do I have something written down saying this week I'm going to do that? No.
Mr. Lee?
I think you have expressed well your sincerity, your experiences, and I think you really know Caddo because you spent so much time here. But I think we got some big changes coming, and we got at least 22 failing schools that we don't know how much time is going to be given before the state takes them. They could take them at any time. But I don't see the school board particularly trying to develop a relationship with the state. In fact, it seems like it's the opposite, with concern about what the state might do. And I'd like to hear you comment a little bit about what do you see happening with that? How do you perceive, I guess my question is, would you help the board state develop a relationship with each other to help the children in Caddo, the failing schools, the ones that are not failing, help the system move forward.
I would do everything I could to do that, Mr. Lee. And let me say this, I'm not a miracle worker, okay? Adults, and we're all adults. I'm an adult, board members are adults, State Department's adults. We just have to be able to sit down and really put aside whatever differences we have and think about what's good for children. To me, that just sounds oversimplistic, but I can't sit here and tell this committee that I can forge a relationship with the Board of Education and the State Department. I think that we can begin that dialogue, and I think it'll be easier than it was in East Baton Rouge, because first of all, they won't be sitting there watching your school board meetings if you're bashing them, okay? That made the even with that, you know what Mr. Patrick did? You know this. He gave us an MOU for 3 years with 4 our schools. All of them came out with one. If he hadn't done that, he could have taken it. So I'm hoping that we could have some conversation, and that's going to be a hard conversation with Mr. White, because I know him. I know that he doesn't believe in MOUs, the memorandum of understandings that we've had before. And he said these schools have failed long enough, and I understand that point, that we've got to do something to help these children. But I hope he'll give me and my leadership 2-3 years to show improvement. Woodlawn showed 14 points in 2012. Give us a chance to see if they can do it 2 more years. And then make a decision. You know, Huntington showed a jump. All the high schools that we have above 75 made the growth target, except for Magnet High, and this so high, you know, it's hard to make that growth target. So, but on the other side, we've got the 5 and 6 high school. North Caddo is 75.9, I think, in 2012. Fair Park, 45. Got to be at 75. That's a long ways to go. Fair Park, 45.2. Booker T. Washington, 50 point something. No, Booker T. Washington, 69. They're up there. Green Oaks, 69. But the 2 that we really have to worry about right now is Fair Park and 50. That's Woodlawn and Green Oaks, I believe. Yeah. But you're right, there's work to be done. And you know, if I get this job, first person I'm gonna call is John White.
Let me get you a quick question there.
Yeah,
This will be
I'm
the last
Gary
one.
Lassman with I don't have a question with YMCA, and I've known John, or known about John since he was that 17-year-old kid. Walking on that campus, more from afar, not his best friends, not his buddies, but watched him in playing ball there and how he reacted. And I've read about Montgomery, watched him while he was here, and read about Montgomery, read about East Baton Rouge, and he seems to be the same guys that matured a lot, but 17-year-old kids. So I'm glad that you're even interested in this job.
Thank you.
It's good to see you. So.
Thank you.
Come on, close words.
I'd like to make one last comment.
Have to be quick, because our time is up. Come on.
You don't want me to react to that.
Well, it doesn't matter, but the fact is what it is.
I've known John a long time. I was superintendent here for 12 years, and he was in the classroom mostly. But he was just coming into administration. But it was obvious then that he had leadership potential, leadership ability, and he was one of the most capable people that I worked with in the Caddo school system. I just want you to know, I appreciated your dedication then, and I appreciated your sincerity this morning.
Thank you. Thank you.
North of Donnie Bickham Middle School. So she's had a little taste of Caddo Parish, and she's back, and we welcome her.
All right, sit, stand,
Well, just whatever you're comfortable with, just give us a
either
little
way.
3 to 5.
I'm like a squirrel on a branch anyway, so I've got a lot of energy. Sometimes sitting still is probably not a good idea because my leg will start twitching and you're going, what's wrong with her? I just got a lot of energy, so I'm going to apologize ahead. I want to say thank you for allowing me to be here this morning. It's quite an honor to be before you, and it's quite an honor to be even considered for a school system in my home state. I can't tell you how much joy and pleasure and pride that brings to me. I've been on the outside looking in for a very long time, but was waiting for the right opportunity, and a district that would complement my skill set as well as educate my children. Because wherever I go, as a superintendent or school leader, it has to be the right choice for both myself and my children. And so I'm excited about the opportunities for myself and excited about the opportunities for my children. And so should I be the successful candidate, I would not only invest my time and energy as an employee of this parish or a servant leader of this parish, but also as a parent as well. And so those of you around the table that are parents, you know, as parents, you fight for your kids. And so I would not have it any other way, that my children go with and wherever I am. And so I come before you today as a humble teacher, as a former assistant principal, school improvement officer, area superintendent, and now currently as a sitting superintendent. And you might be asking, why would you leave that? I'd ask the opposite. Why wouldn't I? To be able to come back to Louisiana. So I want to be back in Louisiana. I want to be in the right setting that complements my skills and my children. I was reared by my grandmother that taught me a lot of, I guess, core values, and I still carry those. Matter of fact, she's sitting right here right now. I'm not sure if you can see her. I can hear her. A lot of her words and wisdom, they're right in this ear all the time. And speaking of ears, I will tell you my ears are this size because she pulled them a lot as a kid. As you all know that, in church a lot. In that first row of the pew. So my grandmother and her values and what she taught me throughout my years parlay into my leadership skills in that I do what's right, I do what's right for kids, and those things take paramount over anything else. And sometimes those things clash with what adults like. So, but I stand on my record, I stand on my values, and I stand before you today again, looking forward and hoping that we are able to have a conversation about something that is very important to me, and that is educating kids. It has been my life's work and my life's passion. With that, I will sit down and answer your questions.
All right. Patricia, we've got a number of questions.
Okay.
We want to get through the kind of standard questions.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then we would ask, because of the time limit, that you try to keep them short and
Absolutely.
concise. Okay.
You know, I'm a good Southern girl. I'm long-winded.
I was going to say, I know it'll be tough to try to overcome
It will be.
that. But anyway, the first question is, if you were hired as superintendent, what do you see as your top 3 areas that you would tackle just right away?
Well, as I shared with you yesterday, I spent all day, well, not all day, but most of the day, going in and out throughout the city, just stopping in different little places. I bought more packages of gum than I need. I don't even really chew gum, but I would go into the little convenience stores, et cetera, in the neighborhoods, in and around the city, just kind of trying to find out, went along the boardwalk. And I think the top 3 things for me that came up was, one, obviously, is to continue to push and make sure that we are as prudent as we possibly can be with our tax dollars. I see the scenario of being superintendent is obviously overseeing some of the monies that are here along with the school board. However, stretching those dollars are important. The second thing is ensuring that we are maximizing all of our facilities to its capacity. And then the third thing I will tell you that came up repeatedly from parents and folks that I came across was about student achievement and ensuring that we're progressing. We have some of the best schools here in Caddo. We also have some challenge schools as well that have been habitually on the state watch list. And I think you all are aware of that. So I've done a little bit of my homework there as well and could confirm some of the things that the parents were sharing with me. So I see those as priority, not necessarily in that order, because I think all 3 of them need to be addressed now, not one before the other, but those seem to be the top 3.
You mentioned achievement. What steps would you take to address the achievement gap among poor and disadvantaged youth as well as racially diverse students?
That is, I will tell you, is a challenge across the nation. And I will tell you in my experiences, the best things that I've seen that have happened, as well as myself, I will self-label myself a turnaround specialist. I've gone into, as a principal, 2 different schools and turned those around. The things that help with that, help to close those gaps. One is investing in our instructors, our teachers, ensuring that they were prepared to teach students who came to school unprepared or were having a difficult time. The second thing is making sure that they have the resources that they need in order to close those gaps, as well as ensuring that they build relationships with those students. Because one thing I know about a student who's disadvantaged, if they don't know you care about them, they don't care about what you have to teach. You can have the very best teacher standing in front of them, have all the best resources. If they're not willing to do what is necessary to build a relationship, they've just lost the entire class. Okay? So ensuring that our folks are, again, building the relationships with our students, ensuring that they have the proper resources and that they have the proper professional training or development in order to accomplish their goals. Okay?
Kind of looking at some specifics, what are some of the ways that you've used to reduce the dropout rate and increase the graduation rate? What percentage of students would you want to see graduate from our high schools?
Well, I would tell you this. There are 2 ways to look at graduation rates. There's how many are graduating every year and how many are graduating cohort. And I would tell you 100%. Anything less than that is unacceptable in my opinion, because we're losing out on kids. So how can I go into any high school and select which students are not going to graduate? That's like deciding which room in your house you're going to turn the electricity on. Not a fair game. So I will tell you 100%. That is the goal. I know the state has different standards and levels, etc., but the goal to graduate students in Caddo should be 100%. Not 5% more or 6%. Of course, you got to have incremental goals that are realistic, but 100%. Some things that I've done in order to help with that, I've been experiencing, and I will tell you, that's been some of the best days of my career, is where I'm going and I'm knocking on doors. People are shocked to see me come to their door. But I want to know who those kids are. I want to know them by name. And I want to go and sit and talk in the living room of their households about why it's important for that child to be in school. Okay? It's good for the kid. It's good for the community. It's ultimately good for this country when we have educated students and children that have a passport to go anywhere they want once they graduate. But that comes from someone being engaged in what's going on in the community, going out and listening to what the community has to say. As educators, sometimes we can get into our little foxhole and close out. That's unfair. We need the community. Okay? I go back to that cliche. My grandmother used to always say, it takes a village. It does. It takes a village and some. Today it does. Because kids are not like when we were. I was told to sit down and do something different. I sat down. Otherwise my ears got pulled, from my But the bottom line is this, that's not the kid of today. Even my own children. Okay, sometimes they go up. But again, I think going out, and also going out in the communities, listening and hearing. The second thing I think has been effective is offering alternative opportunities for students. Sometimes kids can't fit in that cookie cutter time frame of where we offer. In my district this past year, we offered what was called the Twilight Program, decrease the dropout rate, if you will, by almost 3%. Why? One simple thing. All we did was shifted the time frames. Instead of 7:30 in the morning, they now come in at 2:30 in the afternoon until 7:30 at night. That's all we did. And people around us in the region go, what did y'all do? That's all we did was shifted the time. Because sometimes kids have family obligations that they can't help. And so when you make those simple changes, again, this is education. It's about prescribing things for students. Not what the adults like, but it's what the students need.
Please give us an example of a curriculum initiative you led or facilitated that led to improved student achievement.
The data has not come back yet, but as a superintendent, last year we were able to, not with new monies, reappropriate monies, being able to look at things carefully and shift some monies to put in a 1-to-1 for all high school kids, grades 9 through 12. That leveled the playing field for every student in that building. And the curriculum that went along with that was things that our teachers had designed themselves. It was self-prescribed. It was also allowing students to script their own learning environment. And our data for our testing doesn't come in until second week of August, so we're still waiting on that. But anytime you have a kid more engaged, you have to do that. We realigned the curriculum so that it was catered towards the students' needs as opposed to what we felt like they should be doing. So little things like that, again, it's just shifting. Doesn't cost anybody any extra dollars. It's just shifting monies, reappropriating them, and using them wisely. I hold that to be wholeheartedly. My grandparents, struggled in order to pay things, and I always remember that. And so when I'm utilizing monies that are afforded to me by taxpayers, I was telling Victor in the car earlier, George probably has my thumbprint on his head because I pinched those dollars so hard. And because I want to see how can we best utilize those dollars and get a return on investment. And that's important to you as taxpayers and as community members as well.
Well, talking about the budget, what kind of approach have you used in the past or considered using when dealing with a budget deficit? What have been your experiences and methods to solving budget problems?
Well, I will tell you this: as a superintendent, these past 2 years have been very challenging economically. Some will tell you that I probably picked the wrong time to be a superintendent with the money crunches that have happened. But I've also seen it as an opportunity to use dollars better. And in the last 2 years, we've been cut over $10 million in a small district. That's tough. That's tough. I mean, in Houston, when I was area superintendent there, we were cutting $80 million. I mean, no, my budget's not even that at this point. So, 80 million versus 10 million. But 10 million, it might as well be 100 million for me. But nothing replaces good teaching and learning and relationship. That doesn't cost a dime. Okay? But some of the things that we've done and implemented, again, reappropriating monies, looking at our procurement, our contracts, I've been able to, as superintendent, bring back into the district over $1 million just by looking at contracts. My thing is, if we're buying things, if it's good for kids, that's what it should be done. Is it effective for kids? Sure. If it's not, why are we doing it? And I got a whole lot of, well, this is what we've always bought, we've always purchased. Does it make sense? Is it effective? If it's not effective, why are we buying it? For something like, I'll give you an example, Scholastic magazines. And that may be very well used here in Caddo. But in Isle of Wight, they were not being used. They were just collecting dust in the library. So why are we buying these every year? We're buying them because we've always bought them. We don't need them. So again, I've been able to put back in over almost $1 million back into our budget by doing things like that, by working with business partners in order to afford us monies. Opportunity Inc. awarded us a $95,000 grant to help with dual enrollment. Smithfield Foods, I know you're all familiar with Smithfield, right? I hope so anyway. Good for the economy there in Smithfield. Smithfield Hams and Waltley Bacon. Working with them to help with some of our facility needs. They put up a brand new scoreboard at one of our high schools for the football. They've donated 25 extra uniforms to our band, etc. And again, all the band had to do, they did for the Dogwood Parade in D.C., all they had to do was hand out coupons. That's it. You got over 100 kids with a stack of 50 coupons. They were gone in 5 minutes. And so 5 minutes worth of work afforded them more band uniforms to expand, and also some instruments. So going out and soliciting business partners as well. And again, always looking for creative ways to crunch the numbers. My CFO probably does not like to see me come and sit down with him at the table. Why? Because I always want to know where are the dollars going, how much they are. If they're being effective, then we can keep utilizing. If not, cut it.
What's your philosophy on neighborhood schools?
I grew up in a neighborhood, absolutely love the idea. I have had the experience in Houston where we had to make some shifts, but I wholeheartedly believe a kid has a right to be in the school in which they live, where they live. But I also know as a superintendent, sometimes that doesn't always balance out. But I will tell you personally, I somewhat lean towards the neighborhood. Because again, it's what makes this country, is that our communities that we're in, and having our kids grow up and go kindergarten through 12th grade in the same area. But I also know sometimes that doesn't always work efficiently, or it may not be in the best interest of the student because they may want to attend, a specialty center or a magnet. Gotta get my jargons right here. We call them specialty centers in Virginia.
I like that.
So the magnet schools will attract some kids as well. But I'm not opposed to magnets. But how I think you can keep kids in the neighborhood and keep neighborhoods thriving is that you take that magnet from the high school and backtrack it back to the elementary, meaning that you have curriculum that's aligned that feeds those kids out. So that way you keep the kids in the neighborhood and they're not going anywhere because they become now accustomed to, let's say for example, your high school has a magnet engineering. So you got pre-engineering in middle and in elementary so that you track it right on up. So they're prepared, ready to go. So why would you go anywhere else? You've been doing it for K through 8. Why would you go anywhere else? Unless you just, I have twin daughters. One is math and science sound, and the other one is humanities. She definitely would not be going to a science school. She might. I shouldn't say never. But, it's her choice. So I'm a proponent of neighborhood schools when it makes sense for kids.
In selecting a school principal, what kind of criteria do you apply? What's been your experience with growing your own principal as opposed to bringing it from the outside?
I'm gonna answer the latter part of that first. I take great pride in growing leaders. It's one of the things I like to do. As a matter of fact, I have been doing some consulting over the last year by doing that very thing in my district and outside of my district. Of course, I do it in my district for free, but I take what I learn from there and those best practices with my leaders within. And so I do believe in growing your own. I do believe that. But I also believe there's a nice healthy recipe that you have to have for that. You can't just be from your own because if you keep doing, sometimes when you're falling apart or whatever, or you're not doing as well as you think you should, you keep doing the same things, you'll get the same results. And so sometimes you have to look from outside and bring in fresh eyes and fresh talent. But what I look for in principals is that I look for someone cares about kids and safety, and their safety as paramount. And some people scratch their head and go, why wouldn't you put instruction first? Because if the kid doesn't feel safe, or you don't care about them in your school, I don't care what kind of program you have, you can forget it. They're done. They're done. So again, someone first who cares about kids and puts safety of the environment as number one. Secondly, I look for someone who has a pretty strong background in instructional practices. What's best practices and how to implement them and how to work with people. And then thirdly, I will tell you is the type of leadership skills that they have. And why did I put that third? Sometimes people rank that first. I put it as third because I feel, again, if those other two things are in place, leadership will come with that. And then I will say fourthly, if I can add a fourth criterion in there, is to ensure that they're physically responsible as well. Because it's not just the division that's responsible for budget, it's also schools. Okay? And there is a limit. You get an allowance, that's how much you have, and that's it, you work within that. I have no tolerance for people going over budgets. None. Absolutely no tolerance.
What is your experience in meeting the needs of special education students?
What's my philosophy on that?
Yeah, and
Well, my philosophy is that of the federal government.
okay.
And but personally, I believe that all kids deserve a proper education in an environment where they can learn. Okay, and so the federal government mandates all the regulations. To me, that's easy to do, but it's ensuring that those things are being met. My philosophy is they have expectations, we will meet them. Bottom line. If we don't, that costs the district more money if we're not meeting federal guidelines. And again, it goes back to my innate personal feeling that I do believe all kids, and when I say all, I mean all. I'm not just talking about the kids in this side of town or this school or that school. All means all, and oftentimes when I'm writing about kids and I talk about all kids, I usually capitalize the letters ALL because I do mean all. Special ed kids, gifted kids, general ed kids, doesn't matter to me. all kids mean all, and we, as I think it is our duty as educators to ensure that they're all receiving a proper education and in the appropriate environment. Sometimes you have exceptional ed students who are not placed properly, and that comes through eligibility and evaluations to ensure that the students are doing well.
Just before moving that point, Tabitha, will you help on that question with us? Because there's something a little more specific we were looking for, and I want to ask her to ask in
Okay.
a way that I think perhaps
Okay.
will open it up.
Can you explain like what specifically have you done in the area of special ed to help those students progress?
Oh, absolutely. As a teacher, I will start at teacher base, is that I actually will request students to be in my classroom from my principal because I knew that all it took was a formula of ensuring that we prescribe the learning for the students. I found great success with special ed students in my classroom where some of my colleagues did not have that area, because my thing is this: is if you have a cold, okay, you don't walk into CVS and grab anything off the shelf, right? No, you actually take what you need. You look for something that has your, same thing with exceptional ed students. If you are reading deficient, do I just work with you on reading skills and let you read over and over again? No, I work with you truly on what reading skills you're deficient in. Is it fluency? Is it comprehension? What is it? Is it decoding? You never know. So again, until I'm able to assess and know where you are, only then can I be able to help you. As an administrator, I ensured that those best practices were implemented in the buildings where I was. As a district level person now, I ensure that those procedures are in place and that those expectations are set, and that there are resources that are available for those for proper training for that, as well as ensuring that we have the resources to teach students. So if you have a decoding problem, I need to make sure that we have the Wilson reading program available for you, as well as looking for grant opportunities, etc. This past year, when we implemented the iPad one-to-one, some folks in the community were like, why are you giving special ed student? Why wouldn't I give a special ed student an iPad? Why wouldn't I give an autistic student an iPad? It's actually probably better than anything else. Never mind, we're actually going to save money now because the average hardback textbooks is $65, digital textbook $15. I can outfit a kid with all 4 core content and an iPad for the cost of all 4 core content textbooks. So resources, proper training, again, this goes back to that earlier question about meeting the needs and gaps. There's no magic to it. It's the same formula every single time. And sometimes teachers look at me perplexed with that. And as I use with you with the cold symptoms, it's the same thing. You prescribe exactly what is necessary and ensure that people are meeting federal guidelines and regulations, because that will cost the district money for lawsuits if you don't. That's what I meant by my earlier statement about, because the federal government prescribes it, absolutely.
Thank you.
And they watch it closely.
Kind of in developing the leadership core for your system, what steps would you take to ensure that the leadership of schools and district officers are comprised of capable individuals with the abilities necessary to provide positive direction for the school?
I take this approach first. I'm going to help you out by helping you get better at what you're doing, or I'm going to help you out, moving on and finding a new working address. It's real simple as that, because we're about kids and what's doing right. I don't think any of you would prefer me to be running an employment agency here, just to employ people. And so my situation as a leader is that I'm going to help you get better at what you do by offering you opportunities to train and get better and model and learn from others, or I've got to help you out. Because I can't look at you in the face as a taxpayer and say, oh, yeah, well, they're okay. Okay is not okay. Not in this business. Because in the business world, if your bottom line is not coming in where you want, you can cut off some of that production line. I can't do that in my business. In my business, my bottom line is students and their achievement. And when they're not doing well, I have an issue with that. Whether that's coming from this office or the building or within the classroom. I kind of see a kid, I kind of see it this way. I see it as a wheel, if you will, to move forward. You've got the kid in the center. You've got the teachers and administrators in the building, the support staff surrounding that, and then you've got central office covering it all, protecting it all, and trying to make sure that things move forward. And so if I can't provide that coding, something falls apart all along. And so I've got to know first know what folks are doing, what they're responsible for, hold them accountable for what they're doing, provide them with opportunities to improve, and if not, we got to move on. I like to think that is the fairest way to do things. If that's wrong, then something's wrong, been wrong with my entire career, because that's how I've led the entire time.
I want to ask, in the midst of budgetary woes, can you envision closing low enrollment schools? Because we know that's going to meet with some disagreement. And also, have you ever experienced closing of schools in your district?
Yes, sir. I have experienced closing schools, and I say that with a smile, but really my heart breaks whenever I have to do that. My very first week on the job in Houston, I had to get rid of 3 principals and close 2 schools. I worked towards starting the process of closing 2 schools. That was a mandate that was given prior to my arrival, but it landed on my lap as I arrived. And let me just tell you that that is a heart-wrenching experience, because you never want to close out a school that has been a center or a monumental place for a division or a community. Cannot. And, you may have heard of Cashmere High School in Houston or Ryan Middle School. Well, Cashmere, obviously, that wasn't one of mine to close. It was someone else's, but that one didn't happen. And neither did Ryan. So what did we do? We worked at repurposing the schools and building a specialty center within. Right now, Ryan Middle School is a school that is a 6th through 12th grade school for the neighborhood, and the numbers in the school have tripled in the last couple years. And why? Because it's centered around health sciences. So now you have not only the community kids coming back, but you also have kids from within the division coming to it as well. So I try to use that as a last resort, as a closing of a school. But what happens in a closing, you want to make sure that you're communicating constantly, getting feedback as well from the community, because I would not necessarily know what the institutional value of that school is from coming in new. But for those families who live in those communities, whose parents went to that school, they went to that school, I can understand. I can remember when our church closed and combined with the largest church in town. That was a heart-wrenching piece, and I forever remember that. And I took that memory into my sessions with those families and getting feedback about Ryan Middle School, which is one of the schools I was sharing earlier. But getting those folks, and also setting it up for progress and to revive itself. And Ryan is on his way to being revived right now. The other school, unfortunately, we have is closed. Had less than 150 kids in the building, and that was pretty sad. I think I answered.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, along that same line, we've got a number of low performing schools in our district.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of shared with us on the closing part,
Mm-hmm.
but what kind of programs do you see putting into place, or what kind of options do you see we have in improving the performance of these schools?
Well, I don't know that there has been a request from the state board to give us an attempt to do something differently with the school. So that would be my first priority, is knowing what has been done or requested of the state to give us more time in order to improve that school, and seeing if we can do something different. I take this approach with those types of things. I'd rather be in control of the reform that's happening at a place than it be done to me. And so I would really like to go and petition the state board to see if we can do something differently with it. They could give us some more time. I would look internally to see if there's more monies internally, because you're not just talking about closing the school. You're talking about shifting kids from one place to another, disrupting their natural flow of where they go, where they attend school. You're talking about uprooting teachers who may have been there for a while and don't really care to teach anywhere else because they absolutely love being at that school. And the potential of not having a space for them. To me, that impacts our local community and economy as well. When you put people out of work who are able to work and were effective, you're now impacting the economy locally. Where I am now, we have 61% of our employees that live and work in our community. Any one person I put out of work, that impacts the community. And so I have to think about that as well. And that's the approach I take. The funding system is a little different. But with the achievement piece, again, you want to ensure that you put in the right formula for success at that school. And what it may mean at one school may not mean the same at the other. It can't. It can't be the same. It can't be a cookie cutter scenario. And so it really has to be prescribed for that school as opposed to, okay, and I think I've been using the general things about, professional development, resources, etc. Yes, those things work, but what else is there? There may be something different that that particular school may need. That school may need extra time at the end of the school year. Or they may need, some child care after because of the workforce of the community. It may need to look differently. And so, as a school division, we have to be flexible in ensuring that we're meeting the needs of not only our students, but also our communities and their needs.
You answered part of this, but I would like to expand a little bit. Share specific ways you effectively communicate with the board, and I'm more interested in the board and other administrators, but also teaching staff, class staff, community people. You mentioned this somewhere, but you touch that again.
Yes. Well, in addition to ensuring that they're informed about things that are going on, I feel, and I take it up on my shoulders as a superintendent, it is my responsibility to ensure that my board is informed of things. I walked into a situation 2 years ago where I had 5 people going 5 different ways and have come together in this last semester or so as I've gelled them together through numerous workshops, through numerous board retreats, through numerous, professional development for them as well. We're now at a point where they're doing 5-0 votes. Whereas the board could have been 3-2, 4-1, any combination you could think of. But I also do that not only the workshops, also ensuring that they have information beforehand so that they can make informed decisions. I think giving people stuff at the last minute, I don't like surprises. My husband learned that the hard way. I don't like surprises at all. So I need to know I'm a pretty much of a linear person, and I'm not saying I can't adjust and I'm not flexible. But what I am saying is that when I know it's coming, I know it's coming, and I need to know. Did that make sense?
You do.
Okay. All right. All right. I need a game plan, basically, is what I'm talking about. And so, I take that same approach when I'm dealing with individuals who need to know information. In order for you as a community to make an informed decision, it is my responsibility as a superintendent with my staff to ensure that I communicate with you. Communicate with you timely, in a timely fashion. The information is as thorough as can be, and you get all the information. What I know, you know. I have no secrets, okay? And so I sleep easy at night because I have no secrets and I don't hide anything. Because my thing is, I'm an open book. I'm not working for myself. I serve the community in which I live and work. And I wholeheartedly believe in that. As far as my staff, ensuring that they're working collaboratively with me to inform the board and the community as well. I like to have regular meetings. As a matter of fact, every Monday morning, 9 o'clock, my staff, we meet every Monday morning, 9 o'clock, standing, unless there's an emergency in the district. No, don't make a doctor's appointment. Don't tell me you got to take your son somewhere. Every Monday morning, 9 o'clock. Now, yesterday I was here, but I was in that meeting. I Skyped in. Every Monday morning, no matter what. So that I know what are the hot button issues, what's coming up, what's on the horizon, what do we need to plan for, prepare for, and what do we need to inform the board of that coming week. So every Monday morning.
Along the finance end of it, what kind of approaches have you used in the past to attract additional funding for the school district?
As I alluded to earlier, we do partners with businesses. We look at scenarios where we have a foundation locally and work with them and inform them. It's a parent organization that actually goes out and fundraise, and they've been able to support some of the things, like, for example, with the iPads that we have. Parents have the option, it's not mandated, to purchase insurance on it. Now, the foundation has supported a number of the families who may or may not have been able to afford the insurance. It's $50, but when you don't have a whole lot, $50 might as well be $50,000. And so the foundation has been able to support a large portion of those, of the families who cannot afford, as well as they're able to provide teachers with grants in their classrooms. They've raised almost over $100,000 in the last year, and so they take little segments of it and they help out. This summer, they provided a grant to one of our middle schools who is doing what you call a transition program during the summertime for their rising sixth graders. So kind of introducing them and getting them oriented to the new middle school. And so a variety of ways in which that happens. As well as I partner with a grant writing company that costs the district $0. They go out and find grants for us, and we've negotiated a percentage. Right now, they get about 6% of whatever the amount of the grant that we receive. I don't employ anybody for that. They've been able to more recently secure grants for us to have security, student resource officers in our buildings. And so again, they get a percentage of the total grant. So if they don't get the grant, they'll write it. If we do not receive it, they do not get paid. So there's an incentive there for them. The other thing I did in order to save money is look at creative ways in which we can do things for people who within the district. I was able to negotiate with my board to give our administrators a raise who haven't had a raise in over 5 years. We do not get the cost of living raises in Virginia. It is what the board decides, as well as myself as a superintendent. My contract is tied to teacher raises. If they don't get a raise, I don't get a raise. Simple as that. And that's important to me, wherever I go. But the administrators, they received a raise this year. Why? It wasn't really money. We do the 4 day a week, 8 hours, and get paid for 10. Now, you might be scratching your head going, well, that's 2 hours you're not working. But we actually save more money on electricity those last 2 hours in the division, in the utility department. So, just creative ways to do things differently.
I'd like to ask one other question, and then perhaps we have time, somebody else may have some. Are you aware of the intense evaluation of teachers initiated by the state and implemented by the parish? Teachers are extremely angry about it. What exactly can you do to minimize the stress involved here, as it does involve teaching a curriculum that most teachers do not support as valid and vertically aligned?
First of all, I will tell you, I wholeheartedly agree with you. As I shared with you earlier, I come to you as a teacher first. Okay? I see myself as a teacher on assignment right now, doing something different. I wholeheartedly disagree with that whole evaluation piece. And am willing and ready to fight against it. I know it's legislation that's already been voted on and implemented. We have the same thing in Virginia. And it's not only just teachers, it's now administrators as well. And I wholeheartedly disagree with 50%. I mean, are you kidding me? If I get a kid in my classroom on the first day of school who's reading on the second grade level and I'm teaching 9th grade, that's not going to work. But instead, I'd rather them look at student growth as opposed to the achievement piece. But again, there's a difference between achievement and growth for me. And I think that's something that really needs to be evaluated. And it also, unfortunately, for school divisions and for parents and communities in classrooms, it impacts morale. I mean, you're now telling me I'm now accountable for every single piece, and I'm not saying not hold accountable, because I believe in accountability. Don't get me wrong, when it's fairly done. I think it's unfairly done. And I'm sorry, I'm on my soapbox on that one, so let me step back a little bit again and get myself back together here. I don't have a poker face, by the way. You haven't guessed that by now. It is what it is, basically. And that, some things I feel very passionately about, you will know about. And so, again, I will tell you that it's something I think is unfair. I think it's something that needs to be revisited in the state. And thirdly, I will tell you that as superintendent, I take the responsibility on myself to go before legislators and ask for something different. And if that means I have to take teachers with me to do that, that's what it means. I don't think it's right. Because again, I think it impacts morale, which unfortunately, who loses out in the end is the kid. Because now you have folks who are unfairly assessed or held accountable, you're asking them to do more with less, and then at the same time, you're increasing class sizes. That's a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. But that's just me. And maybe I'm the only one. I don't know. You all tell me.
We'll open it up to the group now. We've gone through our standard questions just now.
Yes, and I would want you to please listen, because I have several questions, and I'm gonna do it briefly, and maybe you can answer me.
Okay. Can you give me one at a time?
Yeah, one at a time. Yeah.
One at a time?
Yes, please.
Okay,
I can multitask, but
okay. I know that we have 20 failing schools, and I want you, if possible, to tell us if you have a plan, you have a plan for improving them. Do you have a plan?
I will tell you this. I think it would be unfair for me to tell you exactly what that plan is without knowing exactly what all the issues, because I'm sure even though you have 20, I'm sure you have 20 different problems that are going on. As I alluded to earlier, I think it has to be prescribed for that school. I would ask that if I'm a successful candidate, that I be given time to truly assess what's going on and put together the best plan. And I also think myself making up the plan without knowing the district, it's unfair. Okay?
Let me ask the other one, because I
Okay.
got one more after this.
I'm not saying I wouldn't have a plan though, but I'm
Okay.
saying I don't think it's fair for me to come in and say, here, this is what we're doing. Yeah.
I got you. How much will you put into the system as a study to find ways by which the negative of the system can become positive? For an example, failing schools, the mass dropout, and inadequate facilities for growth, material limit at certain schools.
Again, I would tell you that there needs to be not just a plan, but a strategic plan on how to address those things.
I understand.
One by one, with exact action steps that are measurable and that are consistently communicated with you all as stakeholders. Holding that information in my office, what good is that going to do if you don't know what the return on investment of those things are? As far as the facilities, I would like to see if there has been, because they didn't get that way overnight. I would like to see if there's been a proper facility study done, as well as a good capital outlay project plan, and what's coming up on your school improvement plan as far as construction. I think that's what it's called here, Mr. Lee? This continuous improvement plan within a division for facilities, and ensuring that those things are progressing. And I think once you are able to communicate where you're progressing and allow the public to help with those measurable goals, I think perception begins to turn.
Okay.
At least in my experiences, it has.
Very good. I got up pretty early in the morning and listening at Channel 12 this morning. It was stated that it was a rumor, and it maybe was a reason for you leaving. I don't know where the rumor, but I heard it on the news.
Absolutely, I'm more than willing to address that.
Thank you.
From where I'm coming from, and again, one is the opportunity to be here. Secondly, unlike Louisiana and Virginia, our city council or our county board of supervisors is what I have right now, are our funding sources. We had 3 new members come on at the last election who have not been in my corner and have done everything they can do to undermine what is going on within the school division. And one made some very racial comments in public, in my presence. And my actions were this: I simply got up and left the room. That is it. I didn't make a comment, didn't call anybody, didn't say anything. In addition to that, that same person has been circulating emails in the division, which I've been the recipient of, as well as one of my board members participating in that. Now, I can tolerate a whole lot of stuff. I can put up with a whole lot of things, but that I will not tolerate, and don't have to put up with it, and won't. And the other thing that is not known to the public, but this is, I mean, I guess it's a semi-open, that my family and my children were threatened. So why would I want to stay and work myself to the bones when someone is threatening my children, we had to have extra security in my neighborhood and in our movements. As a matter of fact, 2 days after school closed, I sent my children to Louisiana, to my parents. Okay, so that is the reason why. And that's why they don't know the full story, but now you do. No problem.
Yes, Scott?
I appreciate you coming and sharing, and you seem to know a little about Louisiana. You'd have to learn some of our laws, but you can do that. I'll ask what I think is the obvious question. Excepting 1 year, when you worked in the Houston district, which is a large district, you've either been an assistant principal, or now superintendent of a 5,000 person district. We have more than 5,000 504 and special needs kids. We have more employees than you've ever served directly as a leader. Deal with the scale issue, because so many people say, I'm doing X. And so coming to Caddo is 8X in the algebraic equation, and they get here and they find out it's X to the cube. It's a management level they've never dealt with until you've dealt with it. So tell me a little bit about how we could have any faith that you'd make the jump from a 5,000 person district to a district where you would have more employees than you've ever managed.
Right. Well, I will tell you this, again, my history, obviously you looked at my resume, is that I have been in larger districts, okay? And I have been in leadership roles, never as a superintendent. But I will tell you, again, as you recall earlier, I said that I strategically select places where I feel that I can be successful, as well as my children. And so going back to Virginia, I had an option of 3 different positions as a superintendent. And I strategically selected Isle of Wight. Why? Because and it is small, but I chose that because I saw what my superintendent in Houston was doing. He was going, it's over 200,000 kids, and so I needed to know that I could do the job, and I needed to learn the job. I couldn't do that in a very large district in the first superintendency, so I had to go in a place where I could not only learn my role, I could learn the role of the CFO, which is going to be very critical to what I do every day, as well as the chief academic officer, well, it's the assistant superintendent there of instruction. Here, I think it's a chief academic officer. And meanwhile, I'm a superintendent, I'm a doctorate student, I'm a parent of teenagers. I juggle a lot of balls every day, all day long. And I love the thrill of being able to multitask things. And the other district that I went for and pulled out when I saw this one come open was a district of this size. So I know I can do the work. It's a matter of being able to be given the opportunity to prove that I can do that. I've been in, again, larger districts with much larger issues and problems and concerns than here. And just because I had a certain number of schools in my cluster doesn't mean I wasn't part of the whole organization. I was part of the superintendent's cabinet. And so I have a proven track record of where I've been and what I do. I like to do well. I didn't get into this job to just be mediocre or to just be status quo. My track record speaks for itself, and where I've gone and what I've done, I've had success. And that wasn't the only focal point in what I was doing. I was doing other things as well. And so I know I can do that. I could have taken over a district that had over 80,000 kids. That wasn't for me at that time, because I felt like I needed to do something strategic for myself and for my career. This is a hard enough job. If you don't know how to do it, then you got a problem. You got a bigger problem. So why go into a big 80,000 student, and why not go into a small one where I can really learn the role?
Thank you, Chair.
No questions.
Any questions on the list that you have?
Well, let me ask another question. How do you balance the desire to compensate employees with the budgetary restrictions placed upon the district? And what other ways outside the negotiation process have you been able to reward great performance? Have you have a chance to look at our budget?
I have,
Okay.
and I see you're running somewhat a little bit tight there. So first is let me first award good teaching and learning, or good employees as you described. As I shared with you earlier, a creative concept I came up with for administrators to save money, but yet also boost morale for people. again, the administrative team, and why I didn't do it for teachers as well, because teachers actually had a slight pay increase the year prior to me arriving. And so it wasn't that I ignored teachers, it was that the administrative team had not had any pay raises. And my thought was, if we don't compensate folks, we're gonna start losing them to other districts, okay? And, you know, according to my newspaper, we had a mass exodus, 2 out of 10. Really, that's not massive. But I'm gonna work with that reporter on ensuring that she understands what that word massive means. But that's a Virginia Standard SOL 3.1. I need to work with her on that, about that word. But massive being, again, working with them creatively. 10 hours, work week, 4 days a week in the summer, but they only work 8, they get paid for 10, but we're also saving on electricity of those buildings. We're not having to heat, not at this time of year. We're not having to cool or burn electricity in those buildings, so that actually saves the district money and also boosts morale of folks who are leading those facilities. So that's one creative example there. And the first part of that, again, was ensuring that I award teacher pay and tight budgetary time.
Right.
Okay. I would actually have to comb through the budget in detail and look for ways in which we can squeeze dollars. There's always ways in order to do that. And, you know, I saw some things in the newspaper the other day about field trips. Now, I'm not saying that the field trips are going to pay teachers extra money, but what I am saying is that I had the same problem arriving in Isle of Wight. And so what we did with field trips and extracurricular is that we looked at going at RFPs out to local charter buses. I was able to save, you know, over $50,000 for that with our division. The kids still got their field trips. We still went on extracurricular activities. We just paid less for it. And I won't say better service, but a better bus. In some scenarios, you know, you got a charter bus that might lean back a little, a bus seat, as opposed to a seat that you sit straight up. You know, you may or may not be able to see over the top of the back of that seat. So with a little bit more room, more seats on it. Because I think our largest buses there were like 51 seaters, where, you know, charter bus can be more or less. Just depends on what type. So again, just creative solutions in order to be able to do that, and reappropriating those monies in other areas, I think are very helpful.
Question from Becky.
Hi, I'm Jackie Lansdale, president of Red River United.
Nice to meet
Glad
you.
to have you here in Caddo.
Thank you.
I was very curious, and when you're developing policies, and this is not a contract area, so when you're developing policies, say something that's relevant to the classroom, it could be like planning time, it could be, you know, something along the line of duty-free lunch, something like that, you know, those kinds of things, something along the line of twice monthly pay as opposed to, who do you think are the relevant people that you need to bring to the table to speak with? What is your thought process? How do we usually do that?
Well, my leadership style is this, is that I'm collaborative, okay? I'm not saying I don't have a problem making an executive decision, because I can make those. But I feel like with buy-in and long-term sustainability of things, I think I need to get the input from people who are actually doing those things. And so I think in developing policy, obviously, the board has the ultimate decision on that.
Right.
But it is my task as superintendent, and I'm charged with ensuring that my staff, whether that be someone in my office or not, but I think if it's dealing with the classroom, I think I need those folks who are in the classroom giving that input about what's going on and how it should be tweaked, etc. The other thing about the classroom piece is that I try to keep a connection to that classroom. Since I was a principal, I have required all my administrative team to substitute at least twice a year. And I know that's minimum. Some people end up doing more than that, including myself. The last week of school, I was in a kindergarten class because one of my kindergarten teachers, her son was graduating, and so I was like, well, you know, no need to spend extra dollars. Let me just tell you something. That was the roughest day for me. Rough in the sense that I was tired. And I'm usually a night owl, but I got a shower and went to bed that night after being with kindergartners all day. But again, just keeping that connectivity there. But again, at the table, who will be at the table for developing a policy regarding the classroom would be, of course, some teacher leaders that actually had that certain connection, a building level administrator, someone in, you know, maybe professional development or HR, so that we make sure that we're meeting state guidelines and mandates regarding those things and the requirements, and more than likely probably myself. because I need to be able to articulate what that policy means to my board.
Well, as I say on Family Feud, good answer.
Oh, thank you. It's an honest one though, seriously.
I want to ask one other question I don't think you touched on.
Mhm.
Tools to discipline students have been snatched from the classroom teachers and their administrative staff. When the current positive behavior approach is effective, what can you do as a superintendent to contribute to handle chronically disrupted students that impede the educational process?
Well, I think when kids are disrupting the process, there's something bigger than them just wanting to disrupt the process and what's going on. And one of the hardest decisions I have to make as superintendent is bringing forth a recommendation for expulsion of students. That is tough for me because it goes against everything that I stand for, and I stand for kids. And for me to turn right around and put forward a recommendation to expel a kid, that's very hard. But I also know, keeping that connectivity to the classroom, how important it is for a teacher to be able to teach in continuity for the academic progress of all around. And so I work with my principals now. Every month at our monthly meetings, we actually work on discipline in the building and how can we do it better. Because just like I'm pretty sure Caddo, many school divisions across the nation have been dinged with this disproportionality and the unfair suspension rate of male students, in particular African American males. And so we have what we call discipline action plans that are implemented at schools. We have the response to intervention that usually helps with some of that. Now, they're going to be knuckleheads for as long as there will be school systems, and I'm just going to be honest with you. But we've got to find a way to attract and engage those students. It's not always about disciplining them. It's about engaging them in the classroom. And I wonder and am concerned about a teacher or a classroom that is constantly disrupted and one that's never disrupted. Because I'm thinking, how much are they allowed to go on in that classroom as opposed to someone who has no tolerance? And so just want to make sure that we have proper disciplinary action plans in place at each school that help address some of those things. Because I share with you, I never want to see a student come to me that I have to make a recommendation to the board to expel. That's tough. I lose sleep over that. Because that's one student we put out and go, but then again, in the same coin, I know that I have to have continuity of instruction in the classroom. So I battle with that.
Yeah, Walter.
I appreciate your interest in coming to Caddo.
Mhm. Thank you.
Not sure you know what you're interested in, but it will be a challenge. But I perceive that you're fairly comfortable with yourself. You're able to make decisions.
Yes, sir.
You are a leader, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Just a couple of easy questions. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Lake Charles area, in an area outside of Lake Charles called Sulphur. I was, again, my grandmother really raised me because my youngest brother was burned severely when he was 2 months old. And so my parents had to relocate to Texas. And he spent the first 10 years of his life in the hospital, so my grandmother kept me.
So you're familiar with Louisiana?
C'est bon, chef? Absolutely.
And
I'm familiar with all the cuisine, etc.
Yeah.
Look at me. I eat. I've been cooking since I was 3 years old.
And secondly, what's the racial makeup of the school system that you're in now?
I would tell you that Isle of Wight is pretty much opposite of what we have here in Caddo Parish. But I've worked in diverse divisions in Houston and in Richmond. Isle of Wight right now is 61% white, 35% black, and then there's a smaller percentage of a variety of different ethnic and racial backgrounds. But again, like I said, I selected a smaller district purposely. Many of the divisions in Virginia you will find like that unless you are in a larger metropolitan or urban area like a Richmond or Virginia Beach or Fairfax County or Alexandria as well. But many of them are very much the same. They're usually all small with the exception of those 3 or 4 that I just named.
I would personally like to see you be a school superintendent in Caddo or some other Louisiana system and see you reform the State Department of Education.
I would like to be able to do that. You know, again, being outside of Louisiana, and Virginia does well academically. I mean, they're the 4th ranked state in the nation. And so I have a lot of experience with good curriculum instruction and helping kids meet those needs. Virginia, but being outside and hearing things about Louisiana, this, that, and the other, I know that there are good people here. I know that there is good teaching and learning going on. And as I shared at the beginning, I would relish an opportunity to lead in my home state and look back at my colleagues and say, I might say something else, but I'm just that competitive to say that I will take that bull by the horns and tackle it and move forward. And I will also share with you that I'm looking to grow roots in Louisiana. I'm just not looking to pass through here. I'm looking, you know, I'm getting close to that 5th decade. I know you can't tell, right? It's Orlando. I am looking forward to growing roots back in my home state. I need to be back near the bayous, the good old, I miss those crawfish. I miss the Mardi Gras. I miss all that stuff. You know, yeah, the Peanut Festival's great in Virginia, but nothing like a good old crawfish boil. And you know, the older I get, obviously, the more I want to be there. And I will also say that my children, this summer, we have been visiting universities, and about 2 weeks ago I was home visiting my family. And we went to LSU. That was one of their top 4 picks, and they fell in love. So I was like,
You mean you didn't go to Southern? You hurt
well, I'm sorry.
me. You hurt me.
Also sorry.
You just hurt me.
It's their choice, though.
You just hurt me.
Look, I wanted them to go to
I
University of
understand.
Louisiana,
I understand.
and my dad wants them to go to Grambling, but you know, it's their choice. My daughters will go wherever they want to go. But LSU has been, it was an outstanding visit. So my thing is, I need to be where it will be best for my career and my kids and my family. And I'm looking for roots. I'm looking to sprout out like one of those lovely oak trees that I don't get to see those in Virginia. I get to see dogwood. Now, they're pretty in the spring, but that's about it.
I'd like to run one other thing by you. This is more technical, I'm afraid, than I'm familiar with. The questions come up about your experience in curriculum development. You touched on it just then. But specifically, we'd like to know your experience with Common Core standards, Compass assessment system, and the value-added model.
The value added, I've had experience in Houston with that. Actually, Victor and I had a long conversation about that in the car about the value added piece. And actually, my superintendent at that time, Terry Greer, added something called a Haberman assessment piece that toppled with that said you had to get rid of like the bottom 6%. I didn't agree with that, but I fought him constantly on that. The Common Core piece, Common Core, you can call it whatever you want. It's just good curriculum. It's implementing curriculum, and I've had an abundance of experience with that. I know instruction. I'm a good instructional leader. I have been recognized by my peers as that, as being the Henrico County, which is in Richmond, Instructional Leader of the Year. I've been nominated for the Richmond Education Award because of my leadership styles with that. I've taken over schools that were in the 60s in performance rates. I left that school in the 80s and 90s. And I still wasn't satisfied. Why? Because again, all means all. And if I'm in the 90s, I still got 10% of those kids that were not meeting that piece. That bothered me, and I lost sleep over it. But it's who I am. And maybe I'm my own worst critic with that. But as far as the Common Core, Virginia elected not to sign on with it, which I will tell you, 90% of the superintendents across the state voted to go to Common Core, and the governor still chose not to. But and part of it, we're going to pay the price. Because the ACT, SAT are now catering towards Common Core, as well as resources are going to be expensive. Because now they have to be catered to Virginia, as opposed to what the nation is getting. You don't get that bulk price. You know, I got to go to a specialty shop now as opposed to going to Sam's or Walmart. So,
Any other questions?
I have one more.
yes, ma'am.
Okay, what criteria would you use or focus on those who are not college bound?
Not everyone is.
That's true.
And I married a man, loved him, fell in love with him. He didn't go to college till he was 23 years old. And he's all right by me. But I will tell you this, is that not everyone needs to go to college. I think we have missed the mark here in this country that everybody must go to college. Some kids want to have a career. Some people want to be military. And I think we have to recognize that we need to prepare kids as they leave Caddo Parish, that they need to have a passport, which is called a diploma, to go to college, to go into a career, or contribute as well. They have to contribute as citizens all around, but be a civil servant as well. So either way, but they need, once they finish 12th grade, they need to be prepared to do either three. And I think pushing kids all in the college direction is the wrong way to do it. And I speak from experience. I'm the first person in my family. My dad loves Grambling, but he never attended. I'm the first one in my family to go to college and complete as well. So.
Any other questions? Well, we'll thank you.
Absolutely, sir.
And we'll have about 3 minutes. Some of you did not get a chance to actually shake her hand.
Actually know who I am. I opened Oak Park Elementary School in the Moortown area as one of the first graders in 1958.
Lord.
Lord.
And here's somebody talking about the year before I was born. Don't act like that, all right? But honestly, I did. My first grade teacher, my second grade teacher, one lived 4 houses this way, the other lived 4 houses that way. So I'm talking about real neighborhood situation. My mother kept the teachers' children while teachers taught. So teachers were in and out of our household. In the morning dropping their babies off, and in the evening picking their babies up. So it was always about teachers. My parents were not educated persons, but they trusted teachers unconditionally. When a teacher said it, it was law. It was Bible. I got my calling to become a teacher in the second grade. My teacher, like I said, was right down the street from us. She loved us going in the classrooms, and she loved us coming out. And that was also special for all of us. She was always at the kitchen table at my house helping my parents with the business of the household, like contracts and insurance and buying a refrigerator, all of those kinds of things. So Miss Brown was her name. She knew something about everything, and that's when I knew, I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to teach. And all of the teachers that I had after that just kind of confirmed that this is what I had to do. I'm going to be a teacher. I went to Bethune right around the corner. Still teachers. You can't get away from teachers. I got to tell you a story. When I was in the 10th grade, my English teacher, at the end of the school day, I had hit Elton Street right there at Haywood, walking home from school with my boyfriend. And I had a boyfriend. And he passed us by and he bagged up and he says, "Get in the car." Now I'm talking real neighborhood. When a teacher told you to get in the car, then it was safe to get in the car. In fact, you better get in the car. Well, have times not changed? But he drove me home right around the corner. My mother kept his son, and he commenced to tell her how I was walking down the street holding a boy's hand. She had a fit. Well, I wasn't really holding his hand. We just kind of walking and touching. She, you know what I'm talking about. All right, now, you know, we're kind of walking and touching. But I share it with you because they trusted teachers unconditionally. Yeah, unconditionally. I graduated from Bethune, salutatorian of the class, in 1970. I went to Grambling College then on a scholarship that was secured by my high school English teacher. She lived right across the street from Bethune. I did my student teaching at Lakeshore Junior High School with my social studies teacher who had moved to Lakeshore in the crossover. Thereafter, I was hired as a teacher in Caddo Parish by my high school math teacher. He was then working in human resources. And I did my postgraduate and my doctoral work with monies that I secured from my high school principal. He had founded Teachers Credit Union in the trunk of his car some decades ago. You might remember him. But anyway, when he died, his family called me so that I could speak on behalf of the many classes that he graduated from Bethune. It was always about teachers, even though my parents were not educated persons. I've been a classroom teacher of free enterprise, American history, ELA, reading, speech and drama. I've been the yearbook sponsor, the newspaper sponsor. I've been the pep squad sponsor, the drama coach, whatever else needed to be done because it was fun. It was fun. As a school administrator, I've served the district in its first administrative internship program, initiated by my superintendent right here. I was selected in that first class. I think it was the result of a consent decree where superintendent has been charged with placing more minority administrators in our schools. And so I trained at Northwood Junior Senior High School in the administrative internship program. During that time, he allowed us to be released from our teaching assignments the whole semester. So you actually went to school, went to Northwood every day, starting in January, ending in May. And what you did was you opened school and you closed school under the auspices of an administrative team. And then on Friday, the central office came out to check your logs. That's what you did for us. She checked our logs, okay? But the thing is that it was all about training and being able to learn about the job prior to going into the job. My first administrative assignment in the district was at Ridgewood Middle School as assistant principal. I served there as 4 years, and when my mentor at Northwood retired, I got to go back to Northwood and replace one of my mentors as assistant principal there. I've served as a staff development specialist following that in an assignment that was supposed to last a semester. But that was the time we were Tippin and Tippin. Y'all remember Tip and Tip? Almost killed us, but it didn't. I was a trainer at that time, and so I got to stay in staff development for about 3.5 years. Then my principal from Northwood came to work at central office, and then I got to go back, at least to come over to human resources to work with him. So I've done that. I've been a staffing administrator, and my responsibility was to staff the pure middle schools, the high school, special education, and central office. Following that assignment, well, not following that assignment, we had a little glitch right there. When I served as I served as a staffing administrator, had a little situation in a hiring ordeal, and I was investigated for nepotism. Superintendent at that time had me investigated for nepotism out of a situation that occurred. I I didn't really mind because I know what nepotism is, and I know I had nepotized. So after the investigation, it was his decision to move me back to school level administration, which was fine. I went to Caddo Street. He called the principal and says, she has to get out of here. You have a vacancy sitting over there, and thank God the principal's response was, how soon can you get her there? It was a wonderful experience. Great school, great principal, great community, great student body. You know, your trials come to make you strong. They really do. I served there for a semester, and then I was appointed to Green Oaks High School as principal. You will remember the time. Green Oaks High School was targeted for closure. You remember the superintendent who visited us. She lives there, okay? She lives there. And you may recognize some other things that we have in common. But he said that either you pull it back together, or I shut it down and fire all of you all. Now that's motivation. That's serious motivation. But your trials come to make you strong. You know they do. When I left Green Oaks, we were 652 students strong. We had a brand new performing arts magnet program. We were the only academically acceptable minority high school in the district. We also had on the campus middle school overage program where students in the program could earn 2 grade levels in 1 year. Your trials honestly do come to make you strong. They really do. Then new superintendent, new job opportunity, and I got to come back to human resources. Oversight responsibilities of the same position or in the same department where I had been recently put out. And those of you who don't mind, look at the Lord, look at how he'll work it out. I've served with 4 superintendents in that capacity. I've also served as the assistant superintendent in charge of support services in an interim. Jesse Robinson Jr., you all is my very supportive husband. He'll be here later this evening. I met him in the 1st grade at Oak Park in 1958. We went to elementary school together, we went to high school together, we went to college together, and I never ever recognized that he even existed. He was just not my type. But since that time, we've been married 37 years. We have 3 adult children and 1 grandbaby who attends Oak Park. In fact, this past year he was in room 83. And that's really significant to me because every time I would go and visit him, I would think, God, Miss Brown, this was Miss Brown's classroom. This is where I got my calling to teach, so it's always very special.
Dr. Robin, I hate to cut you off, but I'm going to have to, because we got 15 minutes, we're going to have an hour.
Okay.
And we need to ask, we have some questions that we've asked the other 2 candidates. We want to be fair and ask all the candidates
Yes,
the same
sir.
questions.
I certainly hope then you get a chance to know, you kind of know who I am,
Right.
what I'm about, all right?
Right. If you were hired as superintendent, what would be the top 3 areas you would tackle immediately?
Top 3 areas. One of the first things we got to do is open this school year with as few glitches as possible. Many of the trains have already left the station, so we just need to be certain that we're on the right track and that the school family is comfortable with the fact that we have the capacity to do what we need to do. Secondly, we've started to restructure the academic affairs division. We've collapsed some things, and we've not finished that project. So we need to finish that project so that school level people, teachers, administrative teams, what have you, know where their help comes from. So we gotta do that. And, thirdly, I think it's important that I spend some time with the board to see where their hearts and their minds are as far as directions are concerned, so that we can begin to establish the relationship and get mobile. And can I add a fourth?
Sure.
I'm concerned about succession leadership in the district. So, I've said to you that training is what helped me, and we need a training piece for up-and-coming administrators.
John?
What steps would you take to address the achievement gap among poor and disadvantaged youth as well as racially diverse students?
Well, the book says that the disadvantage will be with us always, but it also says that we are to be our brother's keeper. And when you think about achievement gaps at least, the variables that attribute to achievement gaps in most cases are things that schools can't do anything about. You know the kind of variables I'm talking about. Schools can't do anything about them. So what we have to be concerned about as school people is to make sure that when they are with us, that we provide a quality or a rich experience. We have to make sure that we are identifying the students' strengths and that we are diagnosing their deficiencies correctly. And then we have to make sure that we design our individual lesson plans so that they address the specific deficiencies. We've got to be concerned about rigor but relevance. Are we exposing them to things that actually interest and motivate, that they see as useful? We have to benchmark, and we got to progress monitor. And we got to benchmark, and we got to progress monitor. We got to make sure that we are moving them in the directions that we want them to go. We have to be concerned about the time that they're with us. So if it's possible for us to establish or to develop some adult mentorships or some peer mentorships that will replace some things in their support systems that don't exist, then we have to do that. There are a lot of initiatives that address gaps like the initiatives to address truancy, and I'm particularly interested in the Jump Start initiative that Superintendent White is speaking of, and Caddo will pilot, I believe, real soon. So those are just some of the things that we do to address achievement gaps, Mr. Alfred.
What are some of the things you would do to reduce the dropout rate and increase the graduation rate? And also, what percentage of students would you want to see graduate from high school?
Can I start with the last one
Sure.
first? I want 100, but, I think we're probably, Mr. Monero, is at 63% now? We're at 63% of our students graduating now. 75% would be realistic, I think. Graduation coaches have really made a difference for us. Really made a difference. The relevance is a factor. Why is it that students drop out? They don't see relevance in what it is that they're doing. Here again, those variables for which we cannot affect so greatly impact. It's important to address truancy when you're trying to improve dropout rates. Early literacy. If we can get them on the front end and they are reading by the time they are third grade, then the statistics say that you will probably keep them. If they're not reading by the third grade, then you're looking at high numbers of dropout rates. So if we can attack it on the front end, then maybe we can positively impact the graduation rate on the opposite end.
give us an example of a curricular initiative that you led or facilitated that led to improved student achievement.
Well, I'll go back to Green Oaks. Green Oaks housed, when I went there, a teaching magnet, which we decided it was the best decision to move it to a different campus because it was only servicing maybe 25 students on that campus. We implemented a performing arts magnet program, whereas every teacher on the campus, and we had to write this curriculum, every teacher on the campus was doing something that related to GEs, what we had at that time, and also performing arts, whereas it prepared us for a major production at the end of the semester. We had one at the end of the first semester and one at the end of the second semester. We had to be sure that we had performing arts elements in math, science, social studies, and all of the arts, all of the content areas, and we had to write that curriculum. The same was so with the curriculum that we used in the overage middle school program. We had to write the curriculum that would allow students to earn at least 2 grade levels in one year. We had to do that. Common Core type curriculum. We don't have to write it, but we do have to teach students how to apply it. And I am trained in Common Core. That's some of the things that we've done in curriculum writing. Okay?
Well, I know you've seen our budget. Haven't you?
Yes, sir, I've seen the budget.
Okay, now, what's your approach when dealing with a deficit budget, and have you any experiences or methods of solving budget issues?
I've seen our budget. We've operated in the past 3 years in a deficit situation. We hadn't had any MFP increases in the last 5 years, but you did us better this time, okay? The soaring cost of retirement and health benefits had an impact. RSD monitoring and CAP, and it's been rough, and it's hard to have school with no money. But our finance people have been able to, or were able to, identify some positive variances, and we ended the year, I believe, with like 8.8% above or in the positive. So that's not the best, but it's pretty good, especially compared to other districts in our area. Now, when we get ready to address deficit matters, we have to look at what it is that we are doing and identify inefficiencies and waste. We got to do that first. Duplications of services, and we have to make some really tough decisions about some things that are not easy to talk about. I already told you that I came out of Oak Park and Bethune, so in my community, I already know what it feels like to lose a school, and I know why we lost it. So we have to have some discussion about that, about facilities and what have you. We have to have some discussions about collapsing jobs and doing things more efficiently. We have to apply what I call some very basic economics in our households. When it is that you make spending decisions, you make spending decisions that benefit your family and your household. In school business, the decisions of spending need to be made based on the instructional focuses of the district and safety. That's all we can afford. And those of you who follow the state's instructional plans, then you know that there are four areas in the instructional focus of the instructional focus. First being SLTs and teacher leaders, and then the second being assessment and curriculum, and the third being collaboration, and the fourth being compass, the elements of compass. You know, so if you're gonna spend monies, then it has to be a straight line or a dotted line to the instructional piece. Or it has to be a straight line or a dotted line to student safety. Because that's all we can afford. I think the persons who specialize in school finance will say that a good rule of thumb is that 80 to 85% of your budget needs to be devoted or will be devoted to teacher salaries and to benefits, and another 10 to 15% of your budget will be devoted to contracted services, another 10 or 15% to materials and supplies, and then what's left, maybe 5% to utilities. So you have that you can gauge it by. I'm cheap, conservative spender. Even when I talk to school directors that I have oversight of, I say, bring me a zero increase. You know that, Doc, that's right. Doc, bring me a zero increase budget for the year. And apply some principles of economics when you tell me you're gonna spend money. One, don't spend money that you don't have. You just don't do that. Two, don't ever spend all of the money you got because you can't predict an emergency. Three, you know, if you can spend somebody else's money and you can live with the fine print, spend their money. And then lastly, write everything down twice. Because if you lose the first copy, we need a second copy because you will be held accountable. So that's my thought about budget.
Well, along with that, because of time and because we know that's often would be a difficult decision to make.
Yes, sir.
Tell us about a difficult decision that you made, and how did you determine the recommendation, and how did you evaluate the results of that decision?
I work human resources, so, and I am the level 3 grievance hearing officer. So I make difficult decisions all of the time, and they're not things that I can talk about because they are personnel matters. But whenever it is that you have to work with cohorts and say something like, I'm going to have to send you home for 5 days and dock pay, then that's hard to do because, you know, I work because I enjoy what it is that I do. But my compensation is how I run my household, so that's tough to do. It's tough as I serve as the conduit to parents and to schools to say to a parent that I'm sorry, but I cannot grant you permission to return to that campus because of the way you've acted. Can't go back there. We'll have to find a mediator for you to deal with your children's issues in school. That's a tough one. It's tough to say to a mom or a dad at graduation time, I've reviewed all of the records and we've not met the requirements for graduation. You can't walk. You know, these are really, really tough decisions. And how are the decisions made? You examine all of the information that you have available to you, and you call it. You call it based on what you have to deal with. Always in the best interest of students and student welfare.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
What's your philosophy on neighborhood schools? Your philosophy on strengthening neighborhood schools?
I'm a neighborhood school person. Like I shared with you, I came out of a neighborhood situation, And neighborhood situations like the one that I came out of don't exist anymore. You know, choice. We have a choice to live where we want to live and to go to school where it is that we want to go. So neighborhood schools, I heard somebody say, and I hear it quite frequently, that the magnet schools draw off the brain power or the brain talent of neighborhood schools. And I guess I understand that, but you know, there are smart children in all of our schools. They really are. I don't know whether or not you went to any of the graduations this past May. I went to a number of them. Fair Park Neighborhood School. There were graduates out of Fair Park, and we did not change the graduation requirements for those students coming out of Fair Park at all. They met the same requirements as the students on the other side of Line Avenue. They had a wonderful graduation. You know, there's smart children in all of our schools. We've got to make sure that the experiences in our neighborhood schools are as rich and are as targeted to the needs of the students in the neighborhood schools as they need to be. We have to do that. Interestingly, like I said, all of those programs had wonderful commencement, and we didn't change any requirements. And just because I had a conversation with Roy Murray not too long ago. Roy Murray told me, he says, as he was working on his master's thesis, he was doing some research out of the attendance department, and he did his research with neighborhood schools. And academic performance and disciplinary files and that kind of thing. He said, did you know that there are 660 students in the Woodlawn program that do not have a discipline file at all? You know, they've never been to the office. You know, that's a different vision of what it is most people will perceive about a Woodlawn. 660 students. You know, we can build neighborhood schools, but we've got to change the way we market, the way we talk about what's going on in those programs. We have to be sure again that the services that we offer for the students in our neighborhood schools are compatible to the needs that they have, and they are compatible to the ones in the magnet program.
Thank you. What criteria do you look for when selecting a school principal, and how do you feel about growing your own?
Well, of course, I've got to look for the criteria that the state requires, certifications. But as I look for a school principal, one who's going to be really successful, I want somebody who is courageous. You know, somebody who does not mind trying things to get the results that we need. Somebody who is confident, somebody who could communicate with teachers and staff, you know. Somebody who makes rational decisions about people dynamics. Somebody who is knowledgeable. Somebody who has the energy to do the work. That's the kind of person I think needs to be a principal.
All right.
What's your experience in meeting the needs of special education students, and what specifically have you been able?
Well, you know, since I've served as a principal, I'm not a special educator myself, so I've had to make sure that I've had staff who were knowledgeable and who could advise as to the things that needed to be done, and to do it in an orderly and legal fashion. I work with the attendance and census department. In fact, that department is part of the area in which I work now. So it's very important to make sure that all bulletin guidelines, or you're aware of it, that you're doing things that will address those needs of the students in a legal fashion. My special needs need to be targeted. They need to be sure that I am following, that the teachers are following the plans so that the specific areas of performance are addressed. It's just very important to follow the guidelines. It's very important to partner with parents of special education students. It's very important to communicate what's going on in classroom and school settings with parents. It's very important to keep special education populations involved, mainstreamed. And those are some of the things that you have to always be aware of. Because I'm not a special educator myself, I make sure I got the people who know and who can advise, and I follow their advice to the T.
Okay. What steps will you take to ensure the leadership of schools and district officers are comprised of able individuals with the capacities necessary to provide positive direction for the school overall, not just principal?
We started just, I want to say it was last school year, a very comprehensive employee development program. And that employee development program focuses on classified personnel who work at one level and they're interested in promoting to a next level. And we have great participation. You know, it's good to be able to add to a resume when you are applying for a leadership position that says that I've taken 6 hours, or I've taken 10 hours, or 12 hours of employee development coursework offered by the district. It makes you a stronger candidate. And like I said to you, that training prior to assuming the duties and responsibilities is of utmost importance. Of utmost importance, because, you know, when you're placed in a leadership position, if you've not done the work yourself, people who you oversee won't respect you. You know, you got to be able to help these folks. So there has to be training prior to, and then there has to be mentorship even after the assignment has been made. And I guess I'm so concerned about that. That's why I added a 4 when you ask about 3 things. Is that we have a tendency to put people who have great potential in a job and say, just make it happen. And not all the time are they able to just make it happen. They have the potential, but we have not provided them with the experiences on an experimental level so they can learn. Okay? So training is very important.
With the experience you have with the system, share some specific ways that you would effectively communicate with the board, your other administrators, teaching staff, classified staff, community, and so forth.
Well, in that I've worked with the board for a long time, I'm going to borrow something I've said before. I think most of those trains have already left the station. You know, board members and members of this Caddo family, they know that if they dial my number, I answer my phone. They know that if they send me an email, that I'll respond. If you request information, then I provide that information for you, and I try and do it in a timely fashion. I do understand that, well, I don't know if I understand it, but I have observed that in most cases, superintendents and boards or superintendents don't lose a job because of things much more critical than relationships go south. You know, it's important that they get along, because if they don't get along and communicate honestly, consistently, and clearly, and frequently, then nothing else seems to get done. So